In 2023, an ex-NASA engineer claimed he built a machine that can lift itself against gravity without using any fuel. No rockets, no fire, no exhaust, just electricity. If true, it would break the most sacred laws in physics and rewrite everything we know about space travel. So, is this just another hoax or a door to the future? The engineer's name is Charles Bueller. He used to work for NASA, making sure rockets don't blow up randomly. He was a part of the Space Shuttle, Hubble, ISS, and other huge projects. Now, Bueller and his team work at a private company called Propulsion Technologies, trying to build a long-term dream of space engineers, a spacecraft that doesn't need fuel. It's the kind of thing that would instantly change everything about space travel. Just think of the future where you could go to the moon, Mars, or wherever you'd like without spending tons of resources. And he claims that he and his team have finally cracked the code. That they've built a machine that can lift itself in the air without any propellant. You got it right. The team claims to have violated Newton's third law, the basic rule of our world that every action needs an equal and opposite reaction. For example, in rockets, you throw fuel out the back, that's action. Being pushed by it, the rocket goes forward. That's the reaction. A magical device like that would also violate the conservation of momentum. When you push on something, you gain momentum, but something else has to gain equal momentum in the opposite direction to balance the books. But this device would change the total momentum of the system out of nowhere. If you're getting motion without pushing against anything, how in the world did you do that? It's like a balloon that can somehow move forward without blowing out any air. If the machine actually works, there must be some new, unknown force of nature that we've somehow missed in hundreds of years of physics. Bueller himself called it the new force. Let's try to figure it out. To create this magical device, they used electrostatics. Their test device was little, a 30-gram object about the size of a card deck, and it managed to create thrust or push using electric fields, a kind of invisible force made by electric charges. The new force starts working when two things happen in the system. The first one is electric imbalance. There's some electric pressure happening across parts of the device, kind of like air pressure. If it's not spread out evenly across it, for example, one side has more electric push than the other, that's the first ingredient. And that happens when the electric field, the invisible force that electric charges create, is set up just right. It has to spread out in a certain way, not in straight lines, but uneven and fanning out, like sun rays or the spokes of a wheel. And boom, when it happens, the device pushes on itself and makes the whole object move. At first, the mysterious new force was tiny, barely noticeable, little to no thrust and noise. But with each upgrade, things started to shift. And in 2023, they finally measured enough thrust to overcome Earth's gravity. The weirdest part is that, according to Bueller, in some cases, the thrust keeps going even when the power is off, as long as there's still charge left in the materials. That's weird. That's really weird. That hints at something totally new in physics, something deeper than we currently understand. So now, any honest scientist starts sweating, because that sounds bananas, and frankly, it might be. Bueller admits this is still early work. The team published their discovery and got a patent. By the way, the company includes people who've worked at NASA, Blue Origin, and the US Air Force. They've been tinkering with this stuff for decades. Charles presented his findings at APEC, a conference for people who are passionate about alternative propulsion and crazy stuff like warp drives, anti-gravity, and ways to make Star Trek real. Now, they're actively working on that project. Of course, this stuff got very controversial, and lots of scientists are skeptical. There might be a mistake no one has caught yet, so they want to test the machine in space. If it works out there too, it could change space travel forever. It might be real, because it's not the first time we've discovered something like this. Recently, a startup called Evo Limited claimed that they'd built a quantum drive. another propulsion device that apparently didn't need fuel. They said they're tapping into a weird controversial theory of physics called quantized inertia. It was cooked up by a British physicist named Mike McCulloch. He basically said that inertia, the thing that makes objects resist acceleration, isn't a basic rule of nature, but an effect caused by some weird quantum radiation at the edge of the observable universe. In simple words, if QI is right, then under the right conditions, you might be able to generate thrust without throwing anything backward. You don't need fuel, just electricity and a clever enough setup. Many scientists don't buy into it, but who knows? Maybe that's why these new inventions could actually work. Anyway, initially, the IVO company was founded by a small team of tech guys who wanted to find wireless power. Their first big idea was called CBAT, capacitive-based aerial transmission. Basically, a fancy way to wirelessly send electricity through the air. But somewhere along the way, they pivoted. They started wondering, if we can move electricity through the air like this, can we move objects too? Can we rethink inertia itself? So, in 2021, they began working on a propulsion device based on this quantized inertia theory. They built the quantum drive around this idea. It was a self-contained electric system. No fuel tanks, no combustion, just a plug-and-play box that makes spacecraft move. They said it's light, stackable, and can be bolted onto a satellite like a toaster. And it weighs just a few hundred grams, way lighter than traditional thrusters. In 2023, they tested it, not in someone's garage, but in a legit vacuum chamber, simulating space conditions. The team said they ruled out every known force that might explain the results, and that it did generate thrust, not a lot, but consistent and measurable. Then came the big moment. IVO and a partner company, Rogue Space Systems, launched the quantum drive into space, and now they're waiting for the results of the tests. A lot of physicists think it's all nonsense. Some of them notice that this stuff is impossible because they'd be perpetual motion machines. Basically, if a device like this actually worked, you could use it to make infinite energy, which violates the first law of thermodynamics. But IVO says they're not doing that. They say QI works within our normal Newton's laws, just a bit differently. Anyway, all this stuff needs double-checking. Skepticism is so right because a lot of people get some unpleasant flashbacks. In 2001, a British engineer named Roger Scheuer introduced the M drive. It was this weird cone-shaped device that supposedly created thrust without pushing anything out the back. People were super excited. NASA even tested it with their EagleWorks team, and in 2016, they said they've detected tiny amounts of thrust from the M drive. The media absolutely blew up. People and scientists were hyped up, but later, bigger studies, including one from a German university that really went deep, found the sad result. It was just an experimental error. By 2021, the verdict was in. The M drive didn't work. It was all experimental noise, misunderstood data. Another dream went down the drain. Many propellantless designs have crashed into one huge, stubborn wall, the laws of physics. So it's too early to say that these startups just change the world forever, but if it turns out to be real, it's not just a new engine, it's a new era.
The Earth, frozen and alone, exiled into deep space. Jupiter, the only remaining planet orbiting the Sun. No, it's not a premise for a disaster movie. It's one of many real scenarios scientists explored in their latest simulations. This time, the threat isn't the Sun swelling or a giant asteroid knocking planets into it like a cosmic bowling ball. It's something quieter and possibly already on its way. A recent study examined the potential consequences of a passing star coming too close. One such flyby could send planets crashing, flinging them into space, or mess with their orbits just enough to cause climate changes. But what are passing stars, and how likely is that to occur? Passing stars are normal stars, like our Sun, that move around the Milky Way. Since everything in space is always moving, sometimes stars pass near each other. Usually it's not a big deal. But if a star gets really close, its gravity can tug on planets like Neptune. That tiny tug can slowly change how the planets move, like a ripple spreading through the whole system. Scientists study these close encounters because, even though they don't happen often, they can have big effects over millions of years. They help us understand shifts in planetary orbits and how they may have shaped Earth's past. In fact, one theory suggests that a flyby 56 million years ago is what caused great climate change when Earth's temperature rose by up to 14 degrees Fahrenheit in just a few 100,000 years. That huge temperature jump changed life on Earth, leading to the evolution of some species while causing others to disappear. Even though it's impossible to prove whether there was a flyby a long time ago, we do know that events like this could mess with Earth's orbit in the long run. That's in the past, but what about the future? So far, we know that the solar system will have a close encounter with another star called Gliese 710 in about 1.3 million years. Gliese is moving towards us and is projected to pass within 10,000 astronomical units of the Sun. It won't come close enough to throw planets off, but it could still send icy comets from the Oort cloud our way, like a bored kid tossing a snowball without looking. One might hit something, but probably won't. However, in a recent study, scientists wanted to explore a more extreme scenario. What if a star passed even closer, say just 100 astronomical units from the Sun? That's about 100 times the distance from Earth to the Sun. From our point of view, it's almost unimaginably far, but in space, it's practically brushing shoulders. They ran thousands of long-term simulations covering up to 5 billion years of our solar system's future, and it turns out it doesn't take much. Just one close encounter can be enough to disturb the outer planets, like Neptune, and set off a slow-motion chain reaction that ripples inward. Over time, that gentle nudge can throw the whole system into chaos, a true cosmic butterfly effect. The good news is that even in this worst-case scenario, in 95% of simulations, the passage is nothing to worry about, and all the planets remain in place. However, in the remaining 5%, well, it's one disaster after another. The most frequent casualty in these simulations was Mercury. In nearly half of all unstable scenarios, Mercury ends up on a doomed path straight into the Sun. It's the smallest planet and the closest to our star, so it's especially susceptible to gravitational nudges, whether from the gas giants or from a disturbance rippling inward from a stellar flyby. When Mercury spirals into the Sun, you might think it's game over for the rest of the planets, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the system absorbs the loss and restabilizes, like an orchestra that keeps playing even after one violinist falls off the stage. Oops. Funny enough, Mercury already has a chaotic orbit, the most stretched and tilted of all major planets, and some studies already consider its fall into the Sun in the distant future inevitable. Now, Venus has a slightly better chance in these chaotic scenarios. It doesn't get ejected or swallowed by the Sun as often as Mercury, but it's far from being safe. Most of the time, the instability happens after Mercury goes rogue and disrupts Venus's orbit, nudging it into a slow-motion crash course with Earth or Mars. Even without the interference from field stars, long-term simulations show a tiny but real chance that Venus could eventually collide with Earth just from the way Jupiter affects Mercury. A Venus-Earth collision would result in both planets being completely destroyed. Oh well. A similar fate awaits Mars. According to simulations, in about 0.3% of cases, it either gets flung out of the solar system or collides with another planet. Mars is smaller and lighter than Earth, with weaker gravity, which makes it easier to knock it off track. What's interesting is that even in some cases where Mars is lost, Earth often manages to stay in place. Jupiter happens to be the heavyweight champion of the solar system, the proud owner of its own cloudy belts. Thanks to its massive size and strong gravity, it acts like an anchor, keeping everything else in check. There are 392 scenarios out of 12,000 simulations where all but one planet vanished, with Jupiter being the last one standing. Its stabilizing influence helps prevent smaller planets from going off course, and in some cases, it even helps the system recover after a disruption. Saturn, while less massive, seems to be Jupiter's loyal partner. But models show that when Saturn shifts its orbit abruptly, it can send gravitational ripples, known as secular resonances, straight into the inner solar system, nudging the orbits of planets like Earth and Mars. Finally, the most vulnerable ones are Uranus and Neptune. Sitting at the edge of the solar system, they're the easiest to knock loose, and in many simulations, they get ejected entirely. That loss sends gravitational ripples inward, disturbing the rest of the planets over millions of years. Even a tiny shift by 0.1% in Neptune's orbital distance can throw the whole solar system out of sync. The balance of gravitational forces would shift, forcing Jupiter and Saturn to readjust, which would push the disturbance toward the inner planets, destabilizing everything. Which brings us to the big question: what about Earth? While most simulated models leave Earth untouched, about 0.2% of the simulations end with Earth either colliding with another planet, Venus, or being thrown into the Sun. Out of 12,000 simulations, in 23 of those, Earth ends up as the only one still orbiting. But that's only if we don't include the Moon in calculations. With the Moon included, Earth becomes harder to predict. Our satellite could crash into Earth, get ripped away by a passing star, or destabilize our orbit over millions of years. Once again, this is a worst-case scenario, and while the odds are really, really small, it's not impossible. So, with that in mind, let's entertain the idea and see what would happen to Earth if it were to end up exiled from the solar system. Earth would become what scientists call a rogue planet, drifting through interstellar space with no sun to anchor it. The surface would quickly freeze, with temperatures dropping to hundreds of degrees below zero. But surprisingly, life wouldn't vanish completely. Earth's core would stay hot for billions of years, powered by radioactive decay and leftover heat from its formation. That heat could keep underground pockets warm. Scientists believe that this is the case with icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. Life might cling on in different caves or buried oceans. It wouldn't be a thriving world, but it wouldn't be completely empty either, at least for a while. Just cold, quiet, and alone. A ghost of a once lively world. And somewhere out there, maybe another civilization will look up, spot a faint blue dot drifting by, and curiously start running simulations of what might happen if this blue planet were to get really close, say just 100 AU from their sun. A vast galactic mystery has recently baffled astronomers. They've noticed that all but one of Andromeda's 37 satellite galaxies point toward the Milky Way. It's so extraordinary that it challenges current cosmology and might provide the answer to the dark matter question. So it happened like this. One day, scientists looked at those other satellite galaxies that go around Andromeda and spotted a really weird alignment. Now, we should keep in mind that Andromeda is kind of like our Milky Way's neighbor. It's huge, about twice as wide as the Milky Way, stretching 200,000 light-years across. It also has way more stars, around 1 trillion, compared to our galaxy's mere 250 to 400 billion. Just like our galaxy, it has a bunch of tiny galaxies called dwarf galaxies spinning around it. There are 37 of them. The strange thing is, almost all of those little galaxies are on the same side of Andromeda. And it's getting even creepier, because it's the side that faces the Milky Way. Only one galaxy is hanging out on the other side. Imagine tossing a bunch of marbles around a tree with nearly every single marble landing on just one side. That's weird, isn't it? Scientists say that this discovery doesn't match what they expected at all. Their usual space models show that stuff like this should be spread out more evenly. But this isn't even close to even. It's so lopsided that they can't really explain it yet. Those models follow the main space theory we use today, called the lambda cold dark matter model. According to this theory, the little galaxies should be spread around Andromeda pretty evenly, maybe just a bit lopsided. But in real life, their distribution is way more uneven than the model said it should be. The scientists have run tons of simulations, and only about 0.03% of them ended up close to what we actually see. And still, none of them matched the real thing exactly. So, does it show the lambda CDM model has flaws? That would be a big deal, because we normally use this model to explain how the universe works. If the real sky doesn't match what our model says, especially in a place as close and well known as Andromeda, it might mean that we're missing something big. Another strange thing, many of Andromeda's satellites seem to lie in a flat plane instead of being randomly distributed in all directions. This kind of flattened structure has been seen in other big galaxies too, including our own, but it's still not well understood. Maybe this satellite disk is connected to the weird cosmic asymmetry, but no one really knows how. In any case, the fact that all the tiny galaxies on Andromeda's side line up almost perfectly in the direction of the Milky Way is super weird. It makes you wonder, could our galaxy be pulling or affecting them? But the catch is that nothing like this is happening to the Milky Way's own satellites. Plus, the gravity between our two galaxies doesn't seem strong enough to do that kind of pulling. The answer might lie in one of the most mysterious things the universe has to offer: dark matter. Let's start from the very beginning. We'll go all the way back to the early universe, just after the Big Bang. Now, back then, I wasn't around then, but I'll tell you anyways. Matter in the universe was spread out pretty evenly, but not perfectly even. In a few spots, there were just slightly higher amounts of matter than in others, tiny clumps. Those little differences were important, because gravity could latch onto them. Over time, those denser regions started pulling in more material, slowly growing into the first structures in the universe. Astronomers believe that dwarf galaxies were the earliest and smallest building blocks of galaxy formation. Think of them like Lego bricks, tiny pieces that were later pulled together by gravity to build larger galaxies over billions of years. Now, when we talk about matter, we mean two different things: normal matter, the kind we can see and touch, including atoms, gas, stars, planets, and everything around us, and dark matter, the invisible kind. It doesn't give off any light, doesn't absorb it, and doesn't interact with normal matter in the usual ways. The only reason we know it exists is because of its gravitational pull. There's also a lot more of it than normal matter. Scientists think that roughly 85% of all matter in the universe is dark matter. At the same time, we've never directly detected a dark matter particle. But we know dark matter is there because it bends light, it holds galaxies together, they spin too fast to stay intact otherwise, and it shapes the structure of the universe, allowing us to map its influence on larger scales. While normal matter can clump together, crash, heat up, cool down, and eventually form stars and galaxies, dark matter can't do any of that. It doesn't bump into itself or radiate heat, but it can still form big, invisible clumps, which we call dark matter halos. In the early stages of the universe, the halos acted like gravity wells. They pulled in normal matter, which sank into the centers of those halos and formed the first galaxies. So, galaxies like the Milky Way or Andromeda might be sitting inside enormous blobs of dark matter that we just can't see. So, cosmic asymmetry explained? Not yet. Scientists are sure that dwarf galaxies are some of the most dark matter-dominated objects in the universe. In many cases, over 99% of their mass is likely to be dark matter. That means they give us a unique chance to study dark matter without all the messy gas and stars that exist in larger galaxies. Researchers use dwarf galaxies to figure out how dark matter clumps together, or whether there are alternative theories of dark matter, like warm or self-interacting dark matter. At the moment, the main theory is that dark matter behaves like a cold, clumpy, and slow-moving fluid. At the same time, it might not be totally cold. Maybe it has other properties. Maybe it interacts with itself or with normal matter in subtle ways we haven't discovered yet. If that's true, it could help explain why satellite galaxies form in strange patterns, like the ones around Andromeda. In other words, the Lambda CDM model might indeed have flaws. According to it, thousands of dwarf galaxies should be orbiting around larger galaxies like the Milky Way and Andromeda. But we only see a few dozen. This is known as the missing satellites problem. There are other puzzles too. For example, Lambda CDM predicts that dark matter halos should be the densest at the center, but many dwarf galaxies seem to have cores of their own. Plus, dwarf satellites around galaxies like Andromeda and the Milky Way seem to lie in thin, co-rotating planes, and it's something extremely rare in Lambda CDM simulations. And finally, some simulated dark matter halos are so massive that they should form bright dwarf galaxies, but we don't see them. No wonder astronomers are so interested in dwarf galaxies and the explanation of cosmic asymmetry. For that, we need more precise measurements of their motions and structures and simulations that add more realistic physics, like stellar feedback, turbulence, and so on. Plus, we gotta search for new dwarf galaxies in the local group and beyond, using better telescopes and deeper surveys. Now, getting back to Andromeda's weirdly positioned satellites, if the dark matter theory doesn't work out, there's another possibility that involves large-scale interactions between galaxies. It could be an old collision or a near miss that shaped the current distribution of satellites. For example, some scientists think a smaller galaxy, Messier 32, might have collided with Andromeda long ago, stirring things up. Scientists have seen some lopsided shapes in other galaxies before, but none as weird as what's going on around Andromeda. Usually, the little galaxies around big ones spread out pretty evenly or are just a bit off. That makes scientists think Andromeda might be a super special case. They say we need to keep looking, using better telescopes, to crack the Andromeda galaxy mystery. And perhaps, after figuring out the truth, we'll also come closer to solving the dark matter problem.
Look at this giant donut-shaped region far away from Earth, beyond the orbit of Neptune. We're talking about a distance of more than 2.5 billion miles. It's the Kuiper Belt, and something eerie and bizarre is happening there. Dwarf planets and other small objects dwelling there refuse to cluster together. Instead, they follow particular orbits, which is weird. The reason might be a large, mysterious planet hiding beyond Pluto. Its gravity might be messing up the orbits of those Kuiper space bodies. Hear me out. Our solar system is made up of the Sun and everything that goes around it because of the star's strong gravity. This includes the 8 main planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. There are also smaller things like moons, asteroids, and Pluto. For a long time, people thought Pluto was the 9th planet, but when it was reclassified as a dwarf planet, scientists started looking for a new Planet X. Did they have a thing about odd numbers or what? And guess what? Some really think there might be a big, icy planet hiding far, far away beyond Neptune. This mystery planet is often called Planet 9. Now, Planet 9 hasn't been seen yet, but scientists think it might be out there because of some tiny, faraway space rocks called etnos that move following bizarre, confusing paths. These paths seem to be grouped together and tilted in a way that doesn't happen by chance. This could mean there's a hidden planet pulling them into place with its gravity. If Planet 9 is real, it might be 5 to 10 times heavier than Earth. It would also be super far away, hundreds of times farther from the Sun than Earth is. Over the years, scientists have guessed different distances for its orbit, and the newest guess in 2025 says it could be about 290 times farther from the Sun than Earth. There are some cool ideas about where Planet 9 came from. It might have started as a big planet that Jupiter once kicked out of the inner solar system, or it might have come from another star or even wandered around space on its own before getting caught by the Sun's gravity. Even though scientists have looked really hard using powerful telescopes, no one has actually seen Planet 9 yet, and so far, its existence is still just a theory. But recently, a group of researchers tried something clever. they used data from two special space surveys called ERAS and ACARI. These two looked at the sky in invisible light, far infrared, about 23 years apart, which is helpful because Planet 9 is supposed to move very slowly. The team focused on a special list from ACARI, which is better at finding faint, moving things in space. They guessed how bright Planet 9 might be and how fast it might move based on how big, far away, and cold it could be. Then they looked for matching blips in the sky that were seen by both ERAS and ACARI, but not in the exact same spot. That's because a real planet would have moved a little over 23 years, and they indeed found 13 possible matches that could be Planet 9. Their estimations were based on how far away the object seemed to be, 500 to 700 times farther from the Sun than Earth, and how heavy it might be, which is 7 to 17 times Earth's mass. After looking very carefully at all the images, they narrowed it down to one really good candidate. The two detections weren't in the same spot in both surveys, and the way they appeared in the ACARI map matched what you'd expect from a slow-moving object. It showed up on one date and wasn't there 6 months earlier, but of course, there was a catch. Apparently, the old data isn't good enough to figure out the exact path of the potential planet. So, the team wants to do new follow-up observations using a special camera called DCAM, which is really good at spotting faint, moving objects. That way, they can find out if this candidate is really Planet 9. Additionally, it can help us learn more about how our solar system works and how it formed. If Planet 9 is ever discovered, it would totally change the way we understand our solar system. It could explain why some far-out space rocks in the Kuiper Belt tilt weirdly. The thing is, most planets go around the Sun in a flat-ish circle, but those faraway objects are tilted about 20 degrees. Planet 9 might be the reason why. Next, we'd probably find out why those tilted objects seem to point the same way. Their orbits are grouped together in one direction. A big hidden planet's gravity could be hurting them like sheep. There are also some strange tilted objects super far away. They don't make sense unless something big, like Planet 9, is tugging on them. A few space rocks orbit the Sun backward between the big planets, which is kinda the wrong way. That's super weird unless something big is messing with them. Some far-out Kuiper Belt objects keep crossing Neptune's path and haven't been flung away. That's because Planet 9 might be helping keep their orbits stable over a long time. Another cool thing is that if Planet 9 existed, it would be a super-Earth, a kind of planet we see a lot around other stars, but we don't have in our solar system yet. So finding one here would make our solar system more like the others out there. Throughout history, people have been wondering if there could be hidden planets far beyond Neptune, even before Pluto was found. Back in 1880, a guy named George Forbes guessed there might be two unknown planets way out there, one about 100 times farther from the Sun than Earth, and the other about 300 times farther. He thought these mystery planets might be pulling on some comets and changing their orbits, kind of like how Jupiter does with the comets near it. In 2004, scientists found a weird little world called Sedna. It had a strange path around the Sun that didn't seem to be affected by any of the known planets. Its closest point to the Sun, called perihelion, is way too far for Neptune to be the reason. This made some scientists wonder if Sedna got pushed into its path by a hidden planet, maybe even something as big as Earth or bigger. Others thought maybe it was a star that flew by a long time ago, or another star that formed near ours. Then, in 2014, another odd object was discovered. It had a very similar orbit to Sedna, which made people even more suspicious that there could be something big out there messing with their paths. This kicked off a new round of the Planet X or Planet 9 hunt. At a meeting in 2012, a scientist named Rodney Gomez said that maybe there was a big, hidden planet around 1,500 times farther from the Sun than Earth. He thought it could explain the orbits of other odd objects, like some far-out comets and centaurs, small bodies that wander among the giant planets. At that time, those who supported the Planet 9 theory believed that if it existed, it would move around the Sun in a huge, stretched-out circle called an elliptical orbit. It would be about 400 to 800 times farther from the Sun than Earth is, about 13 to 26 times farther than Neptune. If it really had that kind of orbit, it would take around 10,000 to 20,000 years to go around the Sun just once. Plus, if it indeed orbited the Sun, it wouldn't follow the same flat path as the other planets. Its path would be tilted by about 15 degrees to 25 degrees. The farthest point in its orbit, called aphelion, would be in the direction of the Taurus constellation. As for the closest point, it would point towards Serpens, Ophiuchus, or Libra. As for the composition of Planet 9, it would probably be a lot like Uranus or Neptune. It would have a thick atmosphere made of hydrogen and helium, and it would be super cold, negative 375 degrees Fahrenheit. Its core would be made of iron, and its middle layer would be full of rock and water ice. At the same time, if the planet was smaller and denser, then it might be more like Earth, with a rocky surface instead of a gassy one. According to a scientist named Mike Brown, if Planet 9 was real, a space probe would reach it in about 20 years if we used a powerful slingshot path around the Sun.
Now imagine something so powerful that it could rip the atoms of your body apart in a fraction of a second. Ow! This something is soundlessly dashing through space, not extinct, not alive, stuck in between. If this terrifying monster were moving towards Earth, we'd be doomed. So, is it? Astronomers have found a fast and powerful space object zooming through our home Milky Way galaxy at over 110,000 miles per hour. As faster than any rocket we've ever made. This bizarre space object got its name of a zombie star, all because it's the leftover part of a star that passed away a long time ago, but is still moving. This zombie star is a kind of an object called a magnetar, a super small, super heavy ball about the size of a city but heavier than the Sun. That makes it one of the densest objects in space. Only black holes are denser. Hey, let's not forget about me, huh? Magnetars also have an incredibly strong magnetic field. The one our zombie guy has is 100 trillion times stronger than Earth's. That's so strong that if the magnetar came close to Earth, it could wipe out every credit card on the planet just from its magnetism, and we couldn't shop anymore. Plus, if a person got too close to a magnetar, like 600 miles or so, it could pull their very atoms apart, and they couldn't shop anymore. Luckily, this magnetar is very far away and not coming near us. When it was first discovered, it was about 15,000 light-years away from Earth. That's a huge distance, so you don't get to worry about your atoms being disconnected yet. Astronomers first spotted the zombie magnetar in 2008. And since only about 30 magnetars are known in our galaxy, it was a lucky and rare find. Scientists use space telescopes like Hubble and Gaia to watch it over time. That's how they discovered it was moving much faster than they thought. Now, astronomers are trying to figure out how this zombie star got such a big kick. At first, they thought that, like most magnetars, this one was born when a giant star exploded in a supernova and the leftover core became a super-dense neutron star. According to their theory, it could have happened near something called supernova remnant HB9. That would make sense since most magnetars are created this way. But when they tracked its movement, they found that the zombie star was moving too fast and going in the wrong direction to have come from HB9. They traced its path thousands of years into the past and still couldn't find any exploding star or star cluster it could have come from. This means scientists now have one more mystery on their hands. Where did the zombie star come from, and how was it made? One explanation is that it came from a white dwarf, which is the leftover core of a smaller star like our Sun after it runs out of fuel. Now normally, when white dwarfs explode, they're destroyed completely. But in rare situations, instead of blowing apart, a white dwarf might collapse into itself and turn into a neutron star. This neutron star could then become a magnetar. This unusual way of forming a magnetar also gives clues about another mystery: fast radio bursts, or FRBs. These are very quick and powerful flashes of radio energy from deep space. Some FRBs come from galaxies that are so old there shouldn't be any exploding stars left. But if magnetars can be born from collapsing white dwarfs, that might explain how those FRBs are still happening. In any case, learning how magnetars form could help us explain many strange and powerful events we see across the universe. But so far, the investigation is still on, and no answers have been found yet. Zombie stars wandering across the universe isn't the only mystery we haven't solved yet. At one point, you might come across one of them while traveling through the cosmos. It looks like nothing. At a distance of 700 million light-years away from Earth, there's a hole, a blank void that has very few galaxies. This is a roughly spherical region about 330 million light-years across. Our home Milky Way galaxy could fit there thousands of times over. It's the mysterious Bode's void in the constellation of Bodes. Yeah, makes sense. You see, galaxies look like a giant web. Most of them are parts of long structures called filaments. Those wind through the cosmos, and when they meet, they form regions with a high concentration of galaxies. These regions are what we know as galaxy clusters. But between these clusters and threads, there are huge, empty voids that hardly contain any galaxies. Such voids make up almost 80% of the observable universe, and most of them are huge, from 30 to 300 million light-years wide. The Bode's void is one of the most massive ones. It has even earned the title of supervoid. Astronomers think it might be the result of a few smaller voids merging. But what could have caused such giant empty areas to appear in the first place? The reason might lie in the origin of the universe. In its early days, I wasn't around then, all the matter in the universe was packed together quite tightly. Astronomers even thought it was something like a uniform soup. But soon, random quantum fluctuations started disturbing this matter. Some areas became denser, and their gravitational pull became stronger. They began stealing matter from less dense regions. This made such areas even denser, and they kept attracting more and more matter. At the same time, smaller clumps of matter started drifting further away from the center, forming galaxies. If you visited a star cluster called Palomar 5, you'd forget all about voids and supervoids and even zombie stars. Instead, you'd need to concentrate on surviving, since the region is hiding a swarm of over 100 black holes right in the middle. And those black holes aren't just sitting there, they're at work, shaping the cluster nonstop. Palomar 5 is a group of stars located about 80,000 light-years away from us. Normally, clusters like this are dense and tightly packed, with stars all bunched up together. But Palomar 5 is different. It's spread out and has a huge tail of stars, stretching across 30,000 light-years. This beautiful tail is called a tidal stream. It's like the stars are spilling out of the cluster, creating a long river of light. Tidal streams like this are rare and hard to study. Globular clusters like this one are super old. Some are almost as old as the universe itself. But Palomar 5 also stands out because it's the only cluster we know about that still has a tidal stream attached to it. And the black holes inside the cluster might be to blame. They're pulling on the stars in the cluster, messing with their orbits, and slingshotting them right out of the cluster. Or would that be sling shooting? I don't know. Anyway, these stars are what make up the tidal stream. Over time, more and more stars get flung out. Palomar 5 has way more black holes than expected. About 20% of the cluster's mass is made up of black holes, over 100 of them, each about 20 times the mass of our Sun. Of course, Palomar 5 isn't going to last forever. In about 1 billion years, the cluster will completely fall apart. By then, all the stars will have been gone, leaving behind just the black holes. And these black holes will orbit the Milky Way, like a ghostly remnant of a cluster that used to be there. Even though this cluster is creepy enough, there's something even more eerie you can see in space: thick clouds of gas and dust called nebulae. One of the most unusual ones is probably NGC 2392, located 5,000 light-years away from Earth in the constellation of Gemini. It was discovered more than 200 years ago and became popular because of its unusual appearance. It's basically a disk of material with a ring of comet-shaped objects. The tails of these objects stream away from the star at the center of the nebula. The bizarre orange streaks in the outer part of the cloud stretch light-years away in all directions. The middle resembles a ball of twine, but in reality, it's a bubble of material blown into space by the wind of high-speed material produced by the central star. Wow.
You're traveling through space, trying to get through an especially rough patch. You gotta dodge asteroids, space debris, wandering black holes. Now, it's not an episode of a sci-fi series, at least not completely. For the first time ever, astronomers have found a black hole that's completely alone, drifting through space with no stars or planets nearby. This black hole is about 5,000 light-years away from us in our own Milky Way galaxy. Do we need to look for a hero with superpowers to save Earth? First things first, a black hole is a place in space where gravity pulls so much that nothing, not even light, can get out of this region. The gravity is so strong there because a huge amount of matter is squeezed into a tiny space. Supermassive black holes, hundreds of thousands to billions of times the mass of our Sun, are often found at the centers of galaxies. Most of them stay put or move at a very, very slow pace. But the newly discovered black hole is much weirder than anything we've seen before. First of all, it tries to avoid commitment. It's lonely, with no companion star or home galaxy. An even stranger thing is that it's zooming through space at a speed of 31 miles per second. What might be the reason for this speedy cosmic journey? Let's look at the following imaginary scenario. One day, a really massive star exploded in a supernova. It was the very star that formed our black hole. The resulting blast gave the new black hole a massive kick and sent it flying through the galaxy, starting its unbelievable voyage. Now, it's only one of a few possible explanations, but it sounds quite plausible. I bet you can't help but think, what if this wandering black hole decides to visit our solar system? Are we doomed? Scientists tell you to relax and breathe out. This black hole is very far away, and your chances of ever encountering it are infinitesimal, if any. Plus, this black hole is totally quiet and dark at the moment. One day, it might wake up and start glowing. It'll happen if it begins to eat something. In the near future, powerful new telescopes may find many more wandering black holes like this one. Usually, black holes are super hard to find because they don't give off any light. You can only detect them when they're eating nearby matter. That makes them glow brightly. Or when they have a companion star. In this case, it moves in a strange way, which gives away the presence of a black hole. But this newly discovered black hole is lonely, totally by itself. There's no glowing, no companion star moving hectically. So, how did scientists spot our cosmic wanderer? They used something called gravitational microlensing. That's when the black hole's gravity bends and magnifies the light from a star located behind it, kind of like using a magnifying glass, hence the name. This method allowed scientists to detect the black hole even though it was completely dark. All in all, black holes are fascinating things, and some of them are truly unique, like these biggest black holes ever found. You see, almost every galaxy has a supermassive black hole at its center. They're huge, with masses millions to billions of times bigger than our Sun. One of those is called TUN 618. It's a really huge and powerful black hole that's part of something called a quasar, a super bright spot in space emitting incredible amounts of energy. TUN 618 is very, very far away, about 18.2 billion light-years from Earth. And it's 40 billion times heavier than our Sun. There are also black holes that feed on their own kind. Black holes are known for devouring anything that gets too close. And this anything can include not only stars and gas, but also other black holes. Scientists witnessed a ginormous black hole at the heart of one galaxy being swallowed by an even larger black hole in another galaxy. It was the first time we detected such an event. The discovery was made using NASA's Chandra X-ray Observatory. One black hole weighs about 30 million times the mass of the Sun, while the other has at least 1 million times the mass of the Sun. Then, there is a bullet-shooting black hole. Apparently, black holes don't just swallow matter, they can also shoot it out. For example, astronomers studied one relatively small black hole, which is about 28,000 light-years from Earth and weighs between 5 to 10 times the mass of the Sun. And they saw how this black hole pulled matter off a companion star and then blasted some of it out in the form of huge bullets of gas. These bullets are super fast. They move at nearly a quarter the speed of light. Some black holes spin incredibly fast, twisting space around them at extreme speeds. One example is a black hole located in the constellation Agila, about 35,000 light-years from Earth. This black hole spins at a staggering speed of more than 950 times per second. If you could place an object on the edge of this black hole's event horizon, it would spin around the black hole at 333 million miles per hour. That's nearly half the speed of light. The smallest black hole discovered so far has been nicknamed the Unicorn. Located 1,500 light-years away from Earth, it's around 3 times the mass of our Sun. This makes it very close to the smallest possible size for a stable black hole. While black holes themselves are far away and difficult to study directly, scientists find new clever ways to study their properties right here on Earth. They've been able to recreate certain features of black holes in the lab. For example, black holes have a gravitational pull so strong that nothing, including light, can escape once it crosses the event horizon. To understand this better, researchers have created an artificial event horizon using fiber optics. They've also been able to simulate Hawking radiation, the kind that likely escapes black holes, by setting up experiments in the lab. These lab-created mini black holes help scientists understand the mysterious properties of real black holes. There are several types of black holes, and each of them is born in its own unique way. Primordial black holes are believed to have formed right after the Big Bang, when the universe was very young. Stellar black holes form when a massive star collapses in on itself. This causes a supernova, where the outer layers of the star explode into space, and the core turns into a black hole. As for supermassive black holes, they're thought to have formed alongside the galaxies they're in. The size of the black hole is usually related to the size and mass of the galaxy. Despite what many believe, black holes don't roam the universe randomly, looking to swallow planets. They obey gravity like anything else in space. So, for a black hole to affect Earth, it would have to be very close, much closer than any black hole is to us right now. Even if a black hole the same mass as the Sun replaced our Sun, Earth wouldn't fall into it. The black hole would still have the same gravity as the Sun, and Earth would continue orbiting it just like it orbits the Sun today. It would get much colder though, so we wouldn't survive such a replacement in any case. But don't worry, our Sun will never turn into a black hole. It doesn't have enough mass to do so. Instead, in about 5 billion years, when the Sun reaches the end of its life, it will become a red giant star. After using up its fuel, it will shed its outer layers, creating a glowing ring of gas called a planetary nebula. What's left will be a cooling white dwarf star. Guess the riddle. It's moving at 5 miles per second. It makes one circle around Earth every 90 minutes. Within 24 hours, it sees 16 sunrises and sunsets. It also observes many strange phenomena, like gigantic, bizarre symbols written in a desert. You probably already know what it is. The International Space Station. There are a lot of things we don't notice here on Earth, but if we step back, we'll see some pretty strange stuff happening on the planet. Most often, astronauts notice these mysterious things, and recently, they've seen weird patterns in a deserted area of Tunis. They aren't like fake crop circles that were popular in the early 2000s. You may think these strange hieroglyphs have an unearthly origin. They're quite large. That's how astronauts could see them from space. But why doesn't anyone talk about them on Earth? Do Tunisians know what's going on there? In many movies and in real life, secret organizations hide information about some kind of extraterrestrial things. You might have also noticed that most videos about strange phenomena taken by eyewitnesses have terrible quality, as if the operator is always shooting on an old VHS camera. But in the case of the ISS, everything is different. The mysterious symbols were captured on a 4K camera mounted on board the ISS. And the owner of this camera is Sen Corporation Limited, which provides video streaming from space to individuals and businesses. And do you know what the principle of this company is? They strive to make space data publicly available and useful. Thanks to the high quality of the video and open access, the mystery of extraterrestrial technology has been solved. Do you know what it is? Think for yourself and see other strange phenomena that astronauts have observed. Perhaps the following riddles will lead you to the right answer, but if you fail, you will get the answer at the end of the video. Meet NASA astronaut Matthew Dominic. He likes to take pictures from the ISS and post them on the internet. After 6 months of working in Earth's orbit, he shared a mysterious phenomenon with us. You can see most of Asia from an altitude of about 250 miles. There are flashes of lightning, city lights, and a strange red glow. Dominic admitted that he wasn't sure about its origin. Considering the glow is so visible from such a long distance, this must be something big. Try to guess. Here's a clue. Perhaps squids are guilty of this strange visual effect. But no, it's not a giant glowing kraken. You'll find the answer at the end. The following phenomenon occurred not on Earth, but above it. Take a look at this golden red glow in the atmosphere. The ISS took this photo while flying over the Pacific Ocean, northeast of Papua New Guinea. If you think it's pulverized gold, then you're wrong. This is probably the most difficult puzzle in this video. Do you know anything about chemistry, physics, and astronomy? If not, then you're unlikely to answer this riddle. Wait, you'll get the answer soon. This picture was taken by an ISS astronaut during a flyby over Southeast Asia in 2021. 2 shimmering blue balls of light appeared in the dark and slightly ominous atmosphere of Earth. One was flickering over the Gulf of Thailand, and the other was glowing near the South China Sea. The difficulty in solving this phenomenon lies in the fact that not one, but 2 scientific phenomena are taking place here. Lightning, reflection of moonlight from ice particles, spaceships from another planet? What do you think it is? Do you want to get an answer? Wait a bit. So the first mystery is those strange hieroglyphs in the desert. Do you have any ideas? I must warn you though, the truth about this phenomenon may disappoint you a little. These are not symbols made by an extraterrestrial civilization. These are agricultural patterns. Someone just plowed the land or planted vegetables. It doesn't seem strange from below, but from above, it looks like an unknown language or a cipher. So, the next mystery is the red light. Some internet users said it could have been an erupting volcano. Others suggested that commercial vessels emit a red light to catch squid. Fishers use this color to attract sea creatures. So maybe it was a hunt on the giant squid after all. And one user claimed that those red lights belonged to a giant fishing fleet. And its red light can be seen in the nighttime images taken by some satellites. It's time to deal with the most difficult mystery, the golden red glow. If you understand the atmosphere of our planet and know about the chemical interaction between the elements of the periodic table, then you've probably guessed what it is. If not, then here's a simple answer. A golden red glow appears as sunlight interacts with molecules and atoms in the Earth's atmosphere. Now let's take a closer look at this. Ultraviolet light falls on molecules such as oxygen, ozone, sodium, and nitrogen. Light stimulates these cells, meaning it charges them with energy during the day, causing them to separate and excite the electrons inside. Then, these charged particles collide with each other and release energy. As a result of this process, a mesmerizing glow appears. It's mostly oxygen that gives the red color to this glow. The golden light appears because of sodium particles. Scientists divide this phenomenon into 3 categories: day glow, twilight glow, and night glow. Depending on the illumination of the atmosphere by sunlight and the position of the observer, these lights have unique characteristics. Such a fascinating phenomenon not only shows the visual aesthetics of our planet, but also helps scientists better study the upper atmosphere. And finally, the answer to the 4th riddle. We have 2 blue lights. Both have different natures. Let's deal with the first one. The blue light over the Gulf of Thailand was caused by a thunderstorm. But it's not that simple. If you observe Earth from the ISS, you may not always see lightning flashes during thunderstorms because they're usually hidden by clouds. This time, the photographer from the ISS was lucky. There was a gap in the clouds. Lightning illuminated the surrounding walls of this cloud and produced this blue glowing ring. Do you know that a blue thunderstorm is not the most unusual phenomenon in the sky? Red lightning flashes can appear too. They're called sprites. They occur above clouds during an ordinary lightning strike and extend to a height of up to 10 miles. That's why it's hard for us to see them from the ground. Sprites can also extend upward along the trajectory of a narrow cone, like fans. And at this moment, they can glow with blue light. Another cool phenomenon is called elves. These are giant expanding flashes of light in the shape of a pancake. They can reach thousands of miles across and also appear during thunderstorms. Seeing these pancakes is pretty difficult because they exist for less than 1,000th of a second. But what about the second glow? Things get a little more complicated here. The reason for this blue flash is the moon. It seems to us that our satellite glows by itself at night, but it just reflects the sunlight that falls on it. The light from the moon passes through the atmosphere, and the magic happens. We see a blue sky during the day because the sun's rays get scattered in the atmosphere. It's as if they pass through special filters. The light reflected from the moon is also scattered, passes through these filters, and turns blue. But why don't we see this glow at night? Because it's too weak compared to the daytime glow of the sun. But from a certain angle and at a certain height, this blue moonlight can be seen. Astronauts from the ISS managed to catch this scattering. It's like turning the sky blue, only a smaller version. But why blue? Light consists of different colors, and each of them has its own wavelength. Blue has the shortest wavelength, so it's the easiest to scatter.
So, astronomers have just announced that they might have found signs of possible life on a planet outside our solar system. Wow! This distant world is called K2-18b, and it sits about 124 light-years away in the Leo constellation. So, what life are we talking about? Little green men? Octopus-like tentacled creatures? Well, not exactly. First things first, let's define what life is. It's what distinguishes animals and plants from inorganic matter, like the ability to grow, reproduce, and change. Now, what do we need to support life? If what comes to your mind is water, bingo! Scientists have the feeling that K2-18b might be covered in oceans, and if it's so, it can support tiny forms of life like microbes. A team of researchers from the UK and the US used the James Webb Space Telescope to look at the planet's atmosphere. They found hints of 2 very special chemicals. On Earth, only living things can produce those, and the living things I'm talking about are mostly tiny ocean plants called phytoplankton. So, basically, this planet might indeed host life in the form of algae. Now, of course, scientists still need more proof before getting too excited. We should keep in mind that it's possible that those chemicals were made by something we don't understand yet, not necessarily by living things. But still. K2-18b is a big boy. It's more than 8 times heavier than Earth and about 2.5 times larger. So, what makes it even more interesting is that it's located in the Goldilocks zone around its star. That means it's not too hot and not too cold there, just right for the existence of liquid water, which is highly important for life as we know it. Astronomers study faraway planets like this by watching how their light changes when they pass in front of their star. This allows us to figure out what kinds of gases are in the planet's atmosphere. Back in 2013, the James Webb Space Telescope found methane and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere of the planet. These are carbon-based molecules, and it was the first time they were found on a planet in the habitable zone. Scientists also saw a weak signal of a chemical called DMS, which is mostly made by tiny ocean life here on Earth. So, the researchers pointed the telescope at the planet again a year later using a different tool that could pick up more light details. This time, they found much stronger signs of DMS and some related chemicals. But the problem is the signals aren't strong enough yet. They haven't reached something called the 5 sigma level, a parameter scientists use to confirm discoveries. Plus, even if the DMS really is there, it doesn't automatically equal the existence of life. Scientists once found DMS on a comet, which means that it can be produced without some kind of life taking part in the process. And still, the amount of DMS on K2-18b looks way higher than anything seen on Earth. That's why some astronomers are sure it's coming from something living. K2-18b has been a top pick for what scientists call a Martian planet. This term means a big, watery world with thick hydrogen atmosphere. It's not the kind of place where extraterrestrial civilizations like in movies would live. But it could be home to tiny life forms, like the microbes that once lived in Earth's oceans billions of years ago. Once again, not everyone agrees on how friendly K2-18b really is for life. Some scientists think planets like this might actually be too close to their stars to hold on to liquid water. K2-18b orbits its star every 33 days, which is pretty fast, and could mean it's too hot. That's why some experts claim that even if the planet has any water at all, it might be boiling. Or maybe it's not water, but oceans of lava. But most scientists agree on one thing: we should wait and see. With just 16 to 24 more hours of telescope time, astronomers could confirm what they've seen. This could happen in the next few years. And even if it turns out K2-18b isn't the world we're looking for, we're still getting close. With powerful telescopes like James Webb and more coming in the future, we might be able to answer whether we're alone in the universe or not. At the same time, some places in our own solar system, like Mars, Venus, or Saturn's moon Enceladus, might actually have a better shot at hosting life. Or we could keep exploring other promising worlds, like Proxima Centauri b, which is the closest exoplanet we know about. It's just 4.25 light-years away from us and orbits a small star called Proxima Centauri, right in the habitable zone. This planet is a bit bigger than Earth, which makes it a super-Earth. That's what we call exoplanets larger than ours, but much smaller than gas giants like Neptune or Jupiter. Proxima Centauri b is a fast-moving world. It needs a mere 11 days to go all the way around its star. Scientists think Proxima Centauri b might have a rocky surface, and that's a good sign for possible life. On the other hand, its star blasts it with a lot of ultraviolet radiation. It might have already destroyed the planet's atmosphere, if there was any to begin with. So there's a big question mark when it comes to this world's habitability. Then we've got TRAPPIST-1e, another promising Earth-like planet. It's one of 7 rocky planets orbiting a small, cool star called TRAPPIST-1, about 39 light-years away. Discovered in 2017, it might be one of the most promising places to look for life beyond Earth. This planet is actually a bit smaller than Earth, with a mass around 1/2 that of our planet. It completes an orbit around its star in just 6 days, which is super fast compared to Earth's 365 days. The planet's size and density suggest it has a rocky surface, and that's another key factor when we talk about habitability. Even though TRAPPIST-1e is very close to its star, The star is quite dim and cool, so the planet might still have a stable Earth-like climate. Some scientists even think it could have more water than Earth. Let's move on to Kepler 186f, located about 500 light-years away. It was the first Earth-sized planet found in a habitable zone of another star. It orbits a red dwarf, which burns cooler and lives much longer than our Sun. This means Kepler 186f could have stable conditions for billions of years, giving life plenty of time to possibly form and evolve. The planet gets only about 1/3 of the sunlight Earth receives, so it would likely be cooler but still warm enough to keep water from freezing. It also seems to be a rocky planet just like Earth, which boosts its chance of hosting life. Now, how about visiting LHS 1140b, about 40 light-years away? This planet has about 5.5 times the mass of Earth. Scientists think it's rocky and possibly has a thick atmosphere, which is a big deal. An atmosphere like that can trap heat, keep temperature stable, and protect water from escaping into space. This world orbits a quiet red dwarf star, so it's not constantly blasted by harmful flares like some other exoplanets are. Some studies even suggest LHS 1140b could be an ocean world with lots of water. So it's one of the more exciting planets we've found in our neighborhood. And finally, we have Gliese 12b. Astronomers call it exovenus. It sits 40 light-years away from Earth. This world is about the size of Venus and orbits a cool red dwarf star. It needs just under 13 days to complete one orbit. The temperature on the planet is around 107 degrees, which is quite warm but still okay for life. The thing that makes Gliese 12b so interesting is that it could help us understand how Earth-sized planets around cool stars hold on to their atmospheres. That's important because an atmosphere is crucial for things like liquid water and protecting life from harmful radiation. According to some researchers, Gliese 12b is one of the best chances we have to figure out whether planets like this can stay habitable. Mars looks like a silent, barren red desert, but it hides a terrifying threat no astronaut can escape: Martians. Nah, it's worse: dust. It might sound odd at first, but Martian dust is razor-sharp, toxic, and relentless. It's filled with chemicals so dangerous they can destroy not just the technology, but your body from the inside. The dust we breathe on Earth is worn smooth over thousands of years by water and wind. But Mars doesn't have a nice, delightful atmosphere and tons of water like we do. Its dust, called regolith, is angular and cruel. And unfortunately, it doesn't want to stay politely on the ground. It's constantly falling from the sky and covering everything. Every few years, Mars undergoes planet-wide dust storms. They coat landers, vehicles, habitats in a thick, suffocating blanket. NASA's rovers have already been crippled by this invisible threat. Their Opportunity rover, the plucky machine that long outlived its original mission, was finally finished off when dust covered its solar panels. The poor rover couldn't recharge. And eventually, the dust will get into spacesuits. Then astronauts would be in danger, because this regolith is laden with some dangerous stuff. The first is silica, fine, inhalable particles. Once you breathe those in, they can cause an incurable scarring of lung tissue. Next, gypsum, a mineral that, while harmless in small doses, could also cause big respiratory issues when inhaled constantly. One of the most horrifying ones is perchlorates. These are salts that can mess up thyroid glands and create a situation where the body stops producing enough blood cells. And finally, nanophase iron oxides. These are tiny iron particles that can infiltrate the bloodstream, and trust me, that's not going to be pretty either. Martian dust is also exceptionally fine. Individual dust grains are as small as 3 micrometers, which is about the size of a mold spore. For comparison, a human hair is about 30 times thicker. That means it could get in super easily and get deep into the lungs. Once inside the body, the dust isn't easily expelled. There's this sticky mucus in human lungs that serves to keep us safe from stuff like that, designed to trap and expel invaders. But particles smaller than 5 micrometers bypass the lungs' natural defenses. You might not even notice anything, while the dust would remain trapped inside you until it eventually enters the bloodstream. You might think we just have to filter it, but regolith is super hard to protect people from. Exposure to it could happen in every imaginable way – through inhalation, contaminated suits and surfaces, eye exposure, which could even lead to blindness, or even accidentally eating contaminated food and water. Sure, astronauts will be shielded inside high-tech suits, but even the best suits won't be perfect. Regolith is small and clings to surfaces even with electrostatic charges and mechanical tenacity. It can sneak into helmet seals and worm its way into ventilation systems. Or, say we build a habitat module, but its air filters could clog during a dust storm. Or the opportunity situation might repeat. Solar arrays covered with dust and failing just when life support systems need full power. The consequences for human crews could be catastrophic. But hey, luckily, there's good news. NASA is already thinking ahead about this. First, dust filtration will be essential. They want to fill habitats and rovers with high-efficiency air systems, the ones that would trap even the finest of particles. Of course, they'd still clog and would have to be replaced, which means that future missions will have to carry extra filters, enough for years of exposure or even invent self-cleaning filtration systems. There's also this thing called electrostatic repulsion devices. It's technology that uses electric fields to push dust away from surfaces. This could keep spacesuits, airlocks, and life support modules dust-free. Of course, the strictest protocols must be inside habitats. Poor astronauts would have to do home chores literally every day. Vacuum their suits, scrub floors, replace air filters. Imagine conquering other planets only to end up doing home chores again. What's even worse is that we already have space radiation, which is everywhere above the Earth's atmosphere. It's been a huge headache for decades. Adding Martian dust exposure to the mix would make that problem even worse, not even mentioning freezing nights and the lack of a supportive atmosphere. The grim truth is that there will be no emergency evacuations from Mars. The red planet lies at least 9 months of travel away from Earth. There are also communication delays of up to 22 minutes each way. So, no matter what happens, astronauts will have to be fully self-reliant. The journey to Mars is going to be messy and super complicated. Space isn't a vacation spot. Your muscles waste away in zero gravity. You experience vision loss because the brain pressures against your eyes, your blood changes, and that's just what astronauts on Earth orbit go through. And this isn't the only problem NASA is currently facing. Another one is how to send stuff there in general. You can't ship every brick and sell it to Mars. It's too heavy, too expensive, and too slow. So, our astronauts will have to DIY their way into survival right there on the spot. We'll have to grow food in red dirt, print habitats out of nothing, and engineer microbes that turn carbon dioxide into breathable oxygen. They'll also have to get used to new, weird living conditions. Mars is the fourth planet from the Sun, right after Earth, and it receives less sunlight than we do. Its gravity is about 40% of Earth's, which means when standing there, you'll feel lighter and your bones will weaken faster. 1 year there lasts 687 Earth days. But hey, you get twice the birthdays. And yeah, it's livable. It's just wrapped in an unbreathable carbon dioxide atmosphere, dusted with toxic soils, and baked in unfiltered cosmic radiation. Even water exists, frozen at the poles and buried underground, though no oceans. Space living will be part science fair, part medieval farm, and part sci-fi horror. Some space agencies are talking about terraforming. That means changing Mars to be more Earth-like, thickening its atmosphere, warming its soil, releasing liquid water. Sounds like salvation, but it's actually extremely complicated and dangerous. While there are no little green people to greet us on Mars, there might still be life there, in the forms of bacteria, ancient, slow-moving, tucked deep underground. Mars used to have entire oceans covering its northern hemisphere. Back in the day, it resembled Earth. It might have had a thick atmosphere, rivers slicing through canyons, rain falling from the skies, and lakes shimmering under twin moons. But somewhere, about 3.5 billion years ago, things changed. The water dried out or froze. The planet's atmosphere thinned into a whisper. Now, all we have from this time are ancient signs, the valleys, the deltas, the hints of methane in the air. They remain like a fossil record. All this means that life could have existed on Mars. Not some big animals or human-like species, that's extremely unlikely, but some tiny organisms, and unfortunately, if they were there, we struggle to find them now. Still, some bacteria are extremely persistent. It's possible that we'll find traces of them somewhere on the Martian surface. That would be our first ever living organisms found outside our planet, and proof that extraterrestrial life is possible and not as rare as we thought. But if we start terraforming, we might destroy these ecosystems before we even find them. We could erase Mars's ancient history, its geological wonders, and its right to exist as it is. Do we really have the right to do all that just because we want beachfront property on Valles Marineris? It's the Jurassic Park dilemma all over again. We're so preoccupied with whether we could do that we don't stop to think if we should. Plus, exploring Mars isn't just about discovering life. It's about understanding Earth's future, the nature of life itself, and maybe even finding humanity's second home. We might also discover that we should put more effort into cleaning up our current home. Meanwhile, Mars researchers remain optimistic. They think that with proper planning and equipment, all the dangers are manageable. The road to Mars won't just demand bigger rockets and better suits. It will demand wisdom, and we'll see how the future unfolds.
Some time ago, the James Webb Space Telescope spotted a super bizarre space object flying through our galaxy. First of all, it's not orbiting any star. It's a rogue object, just drifting through space on its own. Even better, this wandering thing apparently has a cake-like atmosphere, and examining it can be crucial in our future exoplanet research. Plus, it can help us understand how gas giants evolve over time, and what might happen to Jupiter in the future. You may object that Earth has a layered atmosphere too, with 5 major and several secondary layers. But on Earth, the air is mostly nitrogen and oxygen. As for other planets, they're different. Take Venus, for example, where the atmosphere is super thick and filled with sulfuric acid. There are exoplanets with water vapor clouds, or ones where the clouds are literally made of hot sand. But what about our rogue object? By the way, I have no clue why it got this reputation, but for some reason, scientists chose to call it SIMP. Ouch. Anyway, it seems to have its own unique combo, with cloud patches and weird chemical reactions happening high up. It is covered in clouds made of iron and magnesium, and its atmosphere has carbon-based chemicals floating around. Scientists have spotted auroras on it. Yep, like the northern lights we have on Earth, but way out in deep space. It's the very first time researchers have been able to do a sort of weather report on a rogue object like this. The next weirdness? The object doesn't really fit into any box. It's not a regular planet, because it doesn't orbit a star. But it's also smaller than a brown dwarf, which is something like a failed star. So it's something in between. Not quite a planet, not quite a star. And while it's not dangerous in the we're all doomed kind of way, scientists say rogue objects like this could actually mess things up pretty seriously if they wandered too close to a solar system. Their gravity might throw off the orbits of planets, which could lead to instability, or even space collisions. So yeah, while our rogue friend is not a threat right now, it might become one in the future. Now, this rogue object has some crazy stuff going on. First off, its day is only 2.4 hours long. Like, imagine the sun rising and setting in that time. That's real fast. It's also hanging out about 20 light-years away in the Carina Nebula, which isn't super far in space terms. Another thing that makes this guy special is the fact that it's the brightest free-floating object of its kind that we can see from the northern hemisphere. And since it's just drifting in space without a nearby star messing with our view, it's been directly photographed by telescopes, like NASA's Spitzer. That's actually super rare for stuff this faint and far. When scientists checked it out in infrared, aka heat vision, they noticed that the atmosphere of this rogue object was acting weird, like it kept changing, sometimes more heat, sometimes less. Something funky was going on, but what exactly? So, in July 2023, one team of scientists used the James Webb Space Telescope to dig deeper. They pointed it at SIMP and gathered a ton of data, around 6,000 measurements in just a few hours. First, they looked at shortwave radiation, which is kind of like high-energy heat, and then they did the same with longer waves a few hours later. They discovered that the brightness changed differently depending on the wavelength. Some parts of the atmosphere got brighter, some dimmer, and some didn't change at all. It was all over the place, but they noticed a pattern. All the changes fell into 3 groups. Each group had its own vibe, like its own little signature of what was going on in the atmosphere. And it turned out that the mysterious object wasn't just floating alone in space. It was super dynamic, with layers of clouds and gases doing their own thing. It could mean 3 different things were going on in the atmosphere. To figure out what exactly was behind all this, they built models of the rogue object's atmosphere. Apparently, the first group of curves likely came from low clouds made of iron. Yeah, iron, like actual metal clouds. The second group seemed to come from higher clouds made of this mineral called forsterite, which is basically a magnesium-rich crystal. And it looks like these cloud layers aren't smooth, they're patchy. That patchiness could explain why the light coming from them keeps changing so much. As for the third group of light patterns, they weren't coming from clouds at all. The light seemed to be coming from way above the clouds, from what they think are hotspots in the atmosphere. These hotspots are probably connected to radio auroras, kind of like Earth's northern lights, but happening in the radio part of the light spectrum instead of visible light. But even after all that modeling, there were still some mysteries left. Like, the first group of curves was all over the place, more than they expected. So they think it might be because of carbon-based gases like carbon monoxide floating around. They might absorb certain types of light at random times. In any case, this is the first time we've actually seen this kind of atmospheric chaos directly. But the few hours the researchers spent watching it weren't enough to fully figure it out. To really get the full picture, they'll need days of data, and they're hoping to use NASA's Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope, set to launch in 2027, to dive even deeper. Even though this mysterious object is not a rogue planet, they're definitely worth mentioning. These are basically planets that got kicked out of their home solar system. Yeah, like straight up evicted. When a planet forms, it's usually hanging out with a bunch of other planets around a star. But early on, things can get super chaotic. You know, planets crashing, shifting, getting too close to each other. And sometimes, one gets yeeted right out of the system. So, since they're not tied to a star, these rogue planets are just cruising through the galaxy, totally solo. If they happen to float near something massive, like a star or a black hole, that thing's gravity can tug at them. But otherwise, they just keep drifting. Most of them probably got booted when their system was still forming, and everything was a mess. But according to a NASA scientist, even mature systems can throw a planet out if the orbit gets too weird or something big knocks into them. Now, the next planet we gotta discuss isn't rogue. It has a parent star and all. But there's another cool thing about it. It's still a baby in the middle of forming, and it's pretty rare to catch in action. The baby is already about 3 times the size of Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system. It's part of a system about 400 light-years away. It's been growing for about 5 million years, munching on gas and dust from the disk around its star, kinda like a cosmic buffet. But the thing is, when astronomers checked out the chemicals in the planet's atmosphere using a big telescope in Hawaii, things didn't add up. They were specifically looking at carbon monoxide and water, which can help figure out how much carbon and oxygen is floating around in that atmosphere. Turns out, the planet's chemical mix doesn't quite match the stuff in the disk it's forming from. That's a big deal because it goes against what scientists thought they knew about how planets are supposed to form. Basically, it's saying, hey, your fancy models might be a bit too simple. Planets are supposed to form by clumps of gas and dust crashing into each other and sticking together. Over time, they build up into full-blown planets. If that's true, then planets and their surrounding gas should have the same kind of stuff in them, chemically speaking. But PDS-70b is doing its own thing. So the scientists came up with two ideas to explain what was going on. It might be forming from solid stuff, like dust and ice, not just the gas in the disk. That solid material has carbon and oxygen trapped inside. So, by the time it melts and goes into the planet, it's already changed the chemistry. Or the gas in the disk got more carbon after the planet already formed. Luckily, there's another planet in the same system, PDS-70c, and scientists are hoping that by checking it out too, they'll be able to figure out the truth.
Well, it's official. There is life on Mars. No, it's not a clickbait. Let me break it down for you. Most people imagine extraterrestrial life as little green and preferably intelligent people. But we need to distinguish between life and intelligence. When someone tells you there's life on another planet, you probably immediately think about some smart being you can converse with. But life is something different. It's often associated with organic. And NASA's Curiosity rover has found the biggest organic molecules ever seen on the red planet. They were hiding in super old Martian rocks, and I mean about 3.7 billion years old. These kinds of molecules can be leftovers from stuff like fatty acids, which help build cell membranes. It may not be the life we're used to thinking of, but at the very least, the ingredients for what we call life have been there. So NASA's Curiosity rover has been cruising around a huge crater on Mars called Gale Crater. Scientists think this crater used to be a lake several billion years ago. The rover's main job is to find out if Mars ever had the right conditions for life. And one day, Curiosity drilled into a chunk of ancient mudstone in a spot called Cumberland. It collected some rock powder, and scientists ran a special test on it using a tricked-out oven built into the rover. That oven gets really hot, about 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Luckily, the experiment's conditions allowed the researchers to cook off molecular oxygen, which limited the risk of combustion. And they found something surprising: chains of carbon atoms, up to 12 atoms long. You can find similar chains on Earth in everything from crude oil to, here we come again, living things. You may say that so far, the discovery doesn't sound too earth-shattering. But wait! Yep, these molecules can form naturally through non-living processes, like reactions with water, heat, and minerals. Hydrogen, carbon monoxide, heat, minerals – well, that's enough to cook up these molecules, even without biology. At the same time, such molecules are also common byproducts of life. Here on Earth, we produce similar compounds all the time, especially as carboxylic acids, which are everywhere in living organisms. So, even though these chains might have formed naturally, they could also be leftovers from something once alive. Maybe microbial life, maybe something way more complex. We just don't know yet. But the most unusual and intriguing thing about the molecules is that these carbon chains are pretty fragile. On Earth, sunlight, air, and water would break them down over time. Yet, they're still on Mars after billions of years. So, even if these molecules don't belong to Martian dinosaurs, we now know that the red planet is good at preserving organic stuff. And this is huge for the search for ancient life. There's a good chance that chemical traces of that life might still be hiding in the rocks, and apparently, Curiosity is capable of detecting them. Now, by the way, this is not the first time Curiosity has found organics. It's also picked up chlorinated organics, sulfur-containing stuff, and nitrates, basically ingredients that, if life ever brewed on Mars, would have been part of the recipe. Now, how about we talk about another hero sent to Mars to make incredible discoveries? Meet Perseverance. It's a car-sized robot NASA once sent far away from home to the inhospitable and dry red planet. In particular, to an ancient crater called Jezero. The Jet Propulsion Lab created Perseverance and prepared it for its first space journey, which started on July 30, 2020. For 7 dark, lonely months, the robot was traveling through the cosmos. Luckily, it managed to land on Mars safely on February 18, 2021. NASA even gave its landing spot a cool name, Octavia E. Butler Landing, after the famous science fiction writer. Since then, Perseverance has been busy exploring the red planet. As of April 8, 2025, it's been active for 1,469 Martian days, which are, by the way, called sols. That's about 1,510 Earth days, or a little over 4 years. The rover looks a lot like its older sibling, Curiosity, but it boasts some upgrades. It's literally loaded with tech: 7 scientific instruments, 19 cameras, and even 2 microphones to record sounds from Mars, like the wind or the crunch of the rover's wheels over rocks. Perseverance also brought along a tiny flying buddy. It's a mini helicopter named Ingenuity. Ingenuity made history by performing the first powered flight on another planet on April 19, 2021. It was only meant to fly a few times, but it kept going and made 72 flights in total. Unfortunately, on January 18, 2024, it got damaged during a rough landing, so NASA officially retired it. As for Perseverance, it has big goals. It's searching for signs that Mars once had life, especially in areas that used to have water. In its search, the rover is trying to figure out if the red planet even had the environments that could have supported life. It's also searching for past microbial life, collecting rock and soil samples to bring back to Earth one day, and testing out cool tech, like making oxygen from the Martian air to help prepare for future human missions. After landing in Jezero crater in 2021, Perseverance got to work right away, starting with its first campaign called Crater Floor. It drove south from its landing site and explored a spot called Saita. Then it returned to Crater Floor, Fractured Rough, and collected its first rock sample there. This was just the beginning of its exploration of Mars history. In its second campaign, Fan Front, the rover made its way toward an ancient delta where a river used to flow into the crater. Perseverance climbed up a valley to check out higher ground, looking for more clues about the past of the red planet. The third and fourth campaigns, Upper Fan and Margin Unit, had the rover studying rocks that could tell us more about the planet's climate and whether it could have supported life. In December 2024, they started planning Perseverance's fifth campaign, Northern Rim. It's supposed to study the crater's rim where rocks from deep below the surface were blasted to the top during an impact billions of years ago. Perseverance has made some awesome discoveries so far. It found volcanic rocks on the crater floor that showed they interacted with water. This was a surprise, because scientists thought the rocks would mostly be sedimentary, not volcanic. At a place called Wildcat Ridge, the rover even found signs of an ancient lake that could have supported life. The rocks Perseverance has found are great at preserving potential signs of past life, so this is a really big find. The rover has also discovered some of the sediments in the delta were deposited by calm waters, but later massive floods brought large boulders into the crater. It means that Mars's climate must have been changing over time. Now, on top of that, Perseverance has done a few cool experiments. The MOXIE experiment managed to produce about 4 ounces of oxygen from the Martian atmosphere. It could be really helpful for future human missions. The rover also used its microphones to study sounds on Mars. It turned out that sound traveled more slowly there than on Earth. Plus, it was quieter on the red planet. The rover's Pixel tool analyzed rocks and found a bunch of minerals like ovoline, clays, and carbonates. This discovery showed that water had always played a big part in shaping Mars. The The RIMFAX radar also helped the team see that the crater floor was made up of solid rock and volcanic material, and that the delta had formed in a calm lake-like environment. All in all, Perseverance has been giving us a much clearer picture of Mars's past. It's discovering evidence of volcanic activity, water, and environments that could have been suitable for life. It's also helping scientists gather crucial data for future missions. By studying the planet's geology, atmosphere, and potential for life, Perseverance is setting the stage for future exploration, and one day, maybe even for humans to walk on Mars.
On March 24th, European skies were dominated by a glowing, insane blue spiral. The eerie sight kept growing, expanding, almost like the whole Earth was about to get sucked into a vortex. And after a couple of minutes, poof, it suddenly disappeared. Even though it looked like some kind of extraterrestrial tech, there's actually a very human explanation behind it. Photos of this strange swirl started popping up all over Europe, with people sharing them from countries like the United Kingdom, France, Norway, and Germany. But if we really want to figure out what happened, we have to look all the way over to the United States. Turns out, on that same day, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket was launched from Florida at around 1:50 in the afternoon local time. So while most people in the US saw clear skies after the launch, it actually caused that strange anomaly in the European skies. And that happened because Falcon 9 is a reusable rocket. So, after launching into space, it releases what is called its payload. And by that, I mean whatever it is carrying, like a satellite. After completing its mission, the rocket itself turns back toward Earth. As it does, it ejects any leftover fuel, which instantly freezes due to the high altitude, forming a spiral pattern because of the rocket's movement. Light then reflects off the frozen fuel, making it visible from Earth. Basically, that's what the blue spiral was, leftover fuel released by the rocket in space. So, should we be worried down here on the ground? I mean, is it dangerous? Well, no. It's not like it was some kind of spacecraft accident, it's just leftovers and light. And this is totally normal for the Falcon 9 rocket. Even though it went viral this time, the same phenomenon was spotted about 4 years ago. Back then, people speculated all kinds of things, like a swirling galaxy moving across the sky, or even an unidentified, unexplained flying object. But nah, it was just one of Elon Musk's space toys. Speaking of which, his space agency is also behind another eerie sighting that's becoming more common. On clear nights, many people have reported seeing a strange string of lights moving quickly in a straight line, almost like a train of stars. Those aren't drones, and they're definitely not perfectly organized shooting stars. These strange lights are actually Starlink satellites from SpaceX. You know, that project that beams high-speed internet from space using thousands of tiny satellites, basically turning the entire planet into a giant Wi-Fi zone. But wait, satellites don't have lights on them. So how is it possible that they look so bright at night? Well, basically, what we're seeing is the sun reflecting off the satellites as they travel through their lowest orbit. And they're only visible if the sky isn't too bright. What's really impressive is that you can see this same event more than once on the same day. That's because Starlink satellites travel at a staggering speed of 300 miles per minute, and they complete one full orbit of Earth every 90 minutes. So, doing the math, that means you could spot those satellites within 2 hours of a previous sighting. Without a doubt, the beginning of the year was busy for skywatchers in the United States. In February, they got to see this stunning cloudy jellyfish shape taking over the sky. What do you think it is? If you guessed another thing related to SpaceX, you're right. This is another art created by a Falcon 9 rocket. This time, it happened because the rocket was launched during the evening twilight. The light from the setting sun bounces off the rocket's smoke trail, creating this amazing effect. Now, let's move on to Italy, where another creepy event occurred. It was a stormy night, And suddenly, way up in the sky, a giant glowing red ring flashed for just a split second. Nope, it was not an extraterrestrial portal. This is something called an ELV. This happens when a powerful lightning strike sends out an electromagnetic pulse that hits the ionosphere, which is a super high up layer of our atmosphere. When this happens, nitrogen atoms up there get excited and glow red, creating a massive but super quick light show. Another red phenomenon happened in Scandinavia, but instead of a ring, it was more like a streak of light. This is known as a stable auroral red arc, or SAR. Despite the name, it's not an aurora. It's something much rarer. This phenomenon happens when the Earth's magnetic field, which acts like a big protective shield, gets disturbed. This disturbance causes some gas in the atmosphere to get super hot, thanks to a huge electrical current around the planet. What's weird is that only oxygen gets heated up during a SAR, which is why these light shows always glow that same red color. And fun fact, this event is more likely to happen after a big solar storm weakens Earth's magnetic field. It is impressive to see phenomena like this with the naked eye, but the view from outside Earth can be just as stunning. In 2022, an astronaut aboard the International Space Station spotted two bizarre blue blobs of light glimmering in our planet's atmosphere. They happened at the same time, but they weren't related at all. One of them was a massive lightning strike that hit right next to a large circular gap in the clouds. The lightning lit up the surrounding cloud walls, creating a glowing ring around the hole. Another one was caused by the moon. The way the moon was positioned made the sunlight it reflected pass through Earth's atmosphere, creating a bright blue blob with a fuzzy ring around it. And if you're wondering what that weird orange halo is, running parallel to the curvature of the Earth, I've got you. That's the edge of the atmosphere, also known as Earth's limb. And this is what it looks like when viewed from the International Space Station. In Canada, residents of central Alberta were looking up at the sky one night when they suddenly saw something strange. A bunch of vertical beams of light that seemed to be coming from the ground and reaching up into the blackness of space. It sure looked like something out of a science fiction movie, but this is actually just an optical illusion. Yep, it's a visual trick caused by some specific winter conditions. This phenomenon happens when light is refracted by ice crystals. Here's what's going on. When it's freezing outside, tiny ice crystals form in the air. These crystals are super thin and flat, so each one acts like a tiny mirror that reflects light sources positioned below it. Basically, the crystals reflect the light straight up, creating those glowing vertical beams. And it can be caused by any light source, like the sun or the moon. But in most cases, the sources of these light pillars is man-made, like car headlights or streetlights. Even though the phenomenon is completely natural, it rarely happens, and only in very specific situations. First, it has to be freezing cold. On that particular day in central Alberta, for example, the temperature was around minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, the weather has to be calm, with no wind at all. If a storm breaks out, forget it. You won't be able to see the light pillars. And don't mix them up with auroras, okay? Auroras are mostly seen in high-latitude regions, like around the Arctic and Antarctic. Since they happen way up in the atmosphere, they're visible over large areas. Light pillars, on the other hand, are more localized and concentrated in a much smaller area. But hey, no matter which one you spot, if you're lucky enough to see one of these amazing sights in the sky, you're in for a show you won't forget. Right now, 4 tiny, Earth-like planets are chilling around one of the closest star systems to us. We're talking second closest. These little rocky worlds are each about 20 to 30% the mass of Earth. So not quite Earth 2.0, but still pretty solid. Will one of them become our new home one day? Well, all of them are pretty close, so future humans might actually visit them someday. Not like next year or anything, but we could potentially send missions there. Don't expect any extraterrestrial neighbors, though. Those planets probably aren't home to life, or at least not anything we'd recognize. Let's take a look at them. The planets are called Bernard B, C, D, and E. How creative, huh? The innermost has a mass of 26% of Earth. The second one is a bit bigger, with a mass of 30% of Earth. The third one has 4% more mass than the previous. And the outermost is... no, it's not the biggest. Actually, it's just a baby, with a mass of 19% of Earth. All the planets are likely rocky, like the inner planets of our solar system. They orbit their star very closely. That's why they only need a few days, under a week, to make a full circle. Now, what about that star these little guys are circling? It's called Bernard star. Astronomers have always had a hunch there might be at least one planet orbiting it. First off, this star is super close, in cosmic terms, of course. Only the Alpha Centauri trio is closer to us. Bernard star is just under 6 light-years away, which is basically next door. At the same time, it's not like our Sun. Bernard star is a red dwarf, the most common kind of star out there. It's got only about 1/6 the mass of the Sun. But red dwarfs are a goldmine for learning about planets outside our solar system. And studying Bernard star can help scientists figure out what planets around single stars, like our Sun or this red dwarf, are like. Or what kind of environments red dwarf planets might have. And most importantly, we might finally find the answer to this super important question. Could any of these places actually support life? For the longest time, scientists thought there might be a big Jupiter-like gas giant hanging out near Bernard star. All because the star has a little wobble. It looks as if it shifts towards and away from Earth over time, so something might be tugging on it. Interestingly, it wasn't a giant planet doing the pulling. According to a study from March 2025, it's actually 4 smaller rocky planets, each about 4 times the mass of Mercury. One day, they ganged up and started tugging on the star together. These planets are incredibly close to their star, so close that they can whip around it in just a few days. Sadly, because of that, they might be way too hot for anything like life. Besides, since these 4 seem to explain all the star's movement, the researchers think there's probably nothing else orbiting the habitable zone. So, there's no Earth 2.0 orbiting around Bernard star. Still, it's an awesome find, especially since this star is basically our cosmic neighbor. Plus, the system might not stay off limits forever. With nuclear fusion engines or light sails, futuristic propulsion systems that could make the trip way faster. We might probably go there one day. And then we'll finally figure out if these worlds are really lifeless and maybe even colonize them. Now, let's see how scientists found the star's hidden planets. Normally, astronomers spot exoplanets when they catch them crossing in front of their stars and blocking some light. But Bernard star is tricky, because in our view, it's like we're looking from above the system, so its planets don't block the light in the usual way. That's why they call it the Great White Whale of planet hunting. To get around this, researchers used a super sensitive instrument called Maroon X attached to the Gemini North telescope on Hawaii's Mauna Kea volcano. Over 112 nights, spread out across 3 years, the telescope picked up tiny changes in the star's movement. These shifts let scientists figure out how many planets must be tugging on the star, as well as estimate their sizes. At first, they found 3 planets. But then they used another device, deliciously called Espresso, and located at the Very Large Telescope in Chile. And only after a shot of this espresso did they find a 4th planet. By combining the data from both instruments, they were able to more or less confidently say their findings were solid, not just random glitches in the data. Even though red dwarfs like Bernard star are the most common type of star in the universe, most are way too far for us to see planets around them easily. These new findings suggest that small rocky planets could be pretty common around these stars, and that's huge for future discoveries. Now, finding new exoplanets is cool and all, but it might be even more exciting to dwell on their birth and evolution. And a recent study has made the sweetest discovery ever. Newly born exoplanets might actually look like Smarties, that popular British candy, rather than spheres. We've always kinda assumed that baby planets are born ball-shaped, but they might be oblate spheroids instead. A team of scientists from the University of Central Lancashire in England used computer simulations to build a model of the formation of planets in dense gas disks surrounding young stars. After that, they compared these models with actual observations and noticed that the young planets took pretty unusual shapes. The thing is that even though almost 6,000 exoplanets have been discovered so far, astronomers still don't have a clear understanding of the sequence of events marking their birth and early evolution. But this new research might finally shed light on this process. So, the astronomers examined the formation mechanisms of gas giant planets like Jupiter and came to the conclusion that planets built up from their centers. After that, the researchers focused on the initial shapes of such planets. They were also interested in how they could encourage the growth of these planetary seeds. How could they turn into such massive planets, some of them bigger than our solar system's largest giants? According to the standard theory of the formation of planets, such growth happens gradually and smoothly. First, dust particles start to stick together, turning into larger and larger objects. This process lasts for a very long time and is known as core accretion. It's the model of planet formation scientists favor. There's another theory, according to which planets' birth might happen over shorter periods of time. This data involves a protoplanetary disk, a disk of gas which makes up 99% of its mass, and dust, around 1%. This disk orbits a newly formed star, and hypothetically, planets might form from this cloud. Protoplanetary disks are likely to be common byproducts of star formation. They might range in mass from 0.001 to 0.3 solar masses. Inside such disks, matter slowly moves inward, and dust particles grow bigger, to the size of pebbles. At one point, after 2 to 3 million years, a giant rotating protoplanetary disk breaks into pieces, and that's how baby planets are born. This theory is known as the disk instability model. As for the model built by the team, it seems to support this second, less favored theory: rapid planet formation through disk instability. All because this theory explains how large planets can form relatively quickly at pretty large distances from their host stars. As for the weird flattened shape of these newly formed planets, it might be due to the material falling onto them. Most likely, it goes mainly to the poles of new planets. One of the main conclusions of the research is that the appearance of young exoplanets, as we see them from Earth, may vary depending on how they're angled. If Earth is directed face-on to an exoplanet, it will seem that the latter has a traditional spherical shape. But if seen on edge, a baby exoplanet will look like a real Smartie. The team is going to continue to investigate the formation of planets with the help of an improved computer model. They believe they can find out the role the environment around a young planet plays in affecting its shape and formation.
You know, oceans cover around 70% of Earth's surface, and we have only explored 5 to 20% of them. And now, astronomers have found more water, a huge stash floating out there in space by a quasar that's more than 12 billion light-years away. And we aren't talking about just a little puddle. It's a mind-blowing amount of water, about 140 trillion times more than all the water in Earth's oceans combined. It's hanging around a supermassive black hole that's a staggering 20 billion times bigger than our Sun. This black hole is surrounded by a super bright quasar. It gives off as much energy as you get if you gathered 1,000 trillion suns. I can't count that high. Oh, by the way, since light takes time to reach us, We're seeing this quasar as it was when the universe was still very young. Astronomers are sure that the newly discovered water reservoir is the farthest and biggest we have ever found in space. Mark Bradford from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory explains that the environment of this quasar is so unique that it's capable of creating an incredible amount of water. Bradford's team, along with another group of astronomers, has been studying the quasar and the supermassive black hole at its center for quite some time. They've noticed that as the black hole pulls in surrounding matter, it heats up the nearby gas and dust. This process has created a region packed with molecules that have never been observed at such a great distance before. Now, quasars were first spotted around 50 years ago, when telescopes picked up super bright objects way out in space. They're not regular stars. They shine from the centers of distant galaxies and are so powerful they outshine all the stars in their galaxy combined. At the heart of every quasar is a gigantic black hole, which is millions or even billions of times heavier than the Sun. When gas and dust swirl toward the black hole, they heat up and release an insane amount of energy. It makes quasars some of the brightest and most powerful things we've ever seen in space. Looking at quasars is like looking back in time. The light we see from them today has been traveling for billions of years. It gives scientists a peek at what the universe looked like way back in the past. Quasars can help us understand how galaxies formed, how matter spread out, and how the first cosmic structures came together. Some quasars shoot out massive jets of superfast particles. Stretching across space, they can sometimes change entire regions of the universe. But let's get back to that space water, or rather water vapor. When astronomers discovered it, it was floating around the quasar, spread across a huge area hundreds of light years wide. For comparison, just 1 light year is about 6 trillion miles. Even though the gas there is incredibly thin, unlike what we're used to on Earth, it's much warmer and denser than the gas found in most other galaxies, including our own Milky Way. The temperature of this gas is around -63 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's about 300 trillion times less dense than Earth's atmosphere. It does sound extreme, even in space terms, it's unusual. Now, water vapor isn't just another molecule. The very fact that it exists near the quasar hints that the area is regularly blasted with radiation. That's what keeps the gas warmer than usual. To add to the mystery, astronomers also found carbon monoxide and other molecules. In other words, there's plenty of raw material floating around. In the future, this gas could help the supermassive black hole grow even bigger, up to 6 times its current size. But that's just one of many potential scenarios. Some of the gas might get pulled into the black hole, some could form new stars, and some might even get flung out into space. Now, finding water vapor in such a distant quasar means that the basic building blocks of the universe have been around for billions of years. Water is crucial for life as we know it, so its presence so long ago hints that the ingredients for life existed much earlier than we might have thought. But water isn't just important for life. It also plays a key role in how stars and galaxies form. When giant clouds of gas cool down, water helps them collapse, making it easier for new stars to be born. But how did researchers even spot this massive cloud of water? In 2008, Bradford's team started looking for water in space with the help of a special instrument called Z-Spec. It was attached to a 33-foot telescope in Hawaii. To double-check their findings, they used another powerful tool, CARMA. That's a group of radio dishes in the mountains of Southern California. At the same time, a different team was searching for water using a telescope in the French Alps. In 2010, the second team found a small hint of water in the distant quasar. It was just one teeny-tiny signal. After that, Bradford's group detected more signals. It was all the proof we needed to conclude that an enormous amount of water was actually out there. Now, our floating cloud of water vapor isn't the only place where we've found water beyond Earth. Scientists have recently made a huge discovery. It turns out there are massive reserves of liquid water hidden deep underground on Mars. So, in theory, Future astronauts could use this water to support missions or even make Mars a long-term home. But of course, there's a catch. This water isn't sitting in nice, accessible lakes or oceans. It's buried so deep inside Mars that we have no way of reaching it with current technology. Scientists have figured this out by analyzing seismic data from the Mars InSight lander. It picked up some strange seismic activity, and the best way to explain it is by these hidden water reservoirs. Mars still does have some water today, mostly as ice on or just beneath the surface. But that's nothing compared to the massive amounts of water the planet had billions of years ago. The big mystery is, where did all that water go? Scientists think it could have either escaped into space or moved into the planet's interior, where it might now be trapped as liquid reservoirs or ice deposits. The problem? We have no way of measuring how much water Mars lost. So for now, that question remains unanswered. Earth's moon has water too, but not in the way you might think. Instead of lakes or rivers, the moon's water is mostly frozen ice, spread out unevenly across the surface. The cold, shadowed poles are especially full of it, since they never get sunlight. A lot of this ice is also mixed in with lunar soil and buried deep underground, making it super tricky to get to. Then there's Enceladus, one of Saturn's moons. It's tiny, just 314 miles across. It's small enough to fit inside Arizona. I think we should try that. Anyway, when NASA's Cassini space probe arrived at Saturn, scientists expected Enceladus to be a barren, frozen world. But instead, they saw huge plumes of icy particles and water vapor erupting from geysers near the South Pole. That meant there had to be a massive ocean hiding beneath its icy shell, sandwiched between the moon's rocky core and the frozen surface. The fact that this ocean is active and constantly sending material into space makes Enceladus a top candidate for future exploration. We also have Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, and one of the most promising places to search for alien life. Europa has a gigantic saltwater ocean that could be 40 to 100 miles deep. This means it might hold more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. But there's a big obstacle. This ocean is hidden under a thick ice shell, which scientists think is 10 to 20 miles deep. Europa's ocean stays liquid because of tidal forces from Jupiter's gravity. The planet's massive pull stretches and squeezes the moon, creating friction, which heats up the interior, stopping the ocean from freezing solid. And the most exciting part is that scientists think water plumes might be erupting from cracks in Europa's ice, shooting ocean water into space. Now, if that's true, we could potentially sample the ocean without having to drill through miles of ice. But there are still a lot of unknowns. How big are Europa's water reservoirs? How quickly do they refreeze? And how does the intense temperature and pressure affect the ice? Scientists are eager to figure this out because Europa's ocean is one of the best bets we have for finding extraterrestrial microbes somewhere in our solar system. It looks like a regular beach, but something sets off an alarm blaring in your head. The sand looks too red, the sun is too bright, the wind is all wrong, it's hard to breathe, and there's no water in the ocean. Well, panic not, it's normal, since you're on Mars. For the longest time, we've seen Mars as a dry, lifeless dust ball, a freezing desert where water exists only as ice or vapor. But new research suggests that billions of years ago, it was a totally different place. And instead of endless dust, it may have had something much more familiar to us – sunny, sandy beaches. Scientists from Penn State, UC Berkeley, and Guangzhou University studied radar data from China's Zhurong rover. It started to roll across Mars in 2021. While exploring the surface of the red planet, it found sloping rock formations that looked strikingly similar to the ones found on Earth's coastlines. Those are called foreshore deposits. They form when waves push sand onto a shoreline. But Zhurong wasn't just taking pretty pictures. It also had ground-penetrating radar, a tool that allowed it to scan deep below the Martian surface as it traveled 1.2 miles between May 2021 and May 2022. And it found something pretty wild. Layers of sediment sloping down at a 15-degree angle. This pattern is identical to the ones left behind by waves on Earth. And this wasn't from the wind, volcanoes, or anything else. It just looked like a real beach. And that's actually a big deal. Because if there were waves and tides, there must have been a large body of water. That means Mars may have once had just the right conditions for hosting life. Even after 3.5 billion years, the formations are still incredibly similar to beaches on Earth. So there must have been a time when Mars was much more than just a dusty rock in space. After revealing this shocking news, Zhurong's radar scanned 260 feet deep into the ground, discovering sediment layers. They once formed along a path perpendicular to an ancient shoreline, the one that likely existed 4 billion years ago. At the same time, it might not be all that surprising. Back then, Mars wasn't the dry, frozen wasteland we see today. It had a thicker atmosphere, a warmer climate, and plenty of liquid water. And I'm not even talking about some tiny puddle. Beaches don't form without a massive body of water. For wave to shape the land like this, there had to be rivers flowing into a vast ocean. Powerful currents had to be moving sand around, and water had to stick around for a long time. This couldn't be just a brief wet spell. It was a period where Mars was hydrologically active for millions of years, potentially being a place where life could have thrived. This discovery gives even more weight to one theory. It has been puzzling scientists since the 1970s. That's when NASA's Viking spacecraft snapped images of what looked like a shoreline wrapping around Mars's northern hemisphere. But there was a problem. The shoreline was all over the place, with elevations varying by up to 6 miles. Wow, which is nothing like our flat, mostly consistent shorelines we see on Earth. This difference made scientists doubt that a Martian ocean ever existed. For years, scientists have been trying to crack this mystery. In 2007, they suggested that Mars' rotation actually shifted billions of years ago. As the planet's massive Tharsis volcanic region grew, the planet's spin axis tilted, warping the surface. It could explain why the shoreline is so uneven today. In other words, what once was a flat and level landscape got distorted over time. Interestingly, Mars has been dropping hints about its watery past for years. Curiosity found ancient ripples in Gale Crater. There were signs of a long-gone lake. Perseverance is currently studying a fossilized river delta in Jezero Crater. Now, with Zhurong's evidence of an ancient ocean, it all comes together. Small lakes? Check. Rivers? Check. A massive ocean covering the northern lowlands? Quite possibly. Zhurong's mission wrapped up in May 2022 after dust blocked its solar panels, but future missions could still explore those ancient shoreline deposits. Scientists might send new missions to drill deeper into the ground to retrieve samples. Or we could use better radar to map Mars' subsurface in more detail. There's a real hope to excavate those areas in the future and find even more clues about Mars' past. At the same time, NASA's Perseverance rover is already working hard in Jezero Crater collecting samples. Scientists hope that it will bring them back to Earth in the 2030s. While those won't include samples from the ancient ocean, they could still help us find out more about Mars's wetter history. For now, the discovery of ancient beaches on Mars gives us a peek into a time when the planet might have looked a lot more like Earth, with water, waves, and rivers. Now let's speak about the Perseverance rover that's still working on Mars in more detail. It has a special drill on its arm and uses it to scrape off the dust and top layers of rock, making small 2-inch wide circles in Jezero Crater. Once, one of its cameras took a close-up photo, and the image showed that the rock wasn't smooth. It was made of tiny interlocking crystals. The rover used 2 special tools to analyze the rock's chemistry. The results confirmed that the rock, named Rochette, was volcanic. It meant it formed from lava or magma, not from mud and clay, like scientists had expected from a former lakebed. Perseverance, also known as Percy, landed on Mars in February 2021, along with a small helicopter named Ingenuity. It is the most advanced rover ever sent to Mars, following in the footsteps of Curiosity, Spirit, Opportunity, and others. But Percy has a different mission. While older rovers mainly studied Martian rocks and climate, Perseverance is searching for signs of past life. Scientists chose Jezero Crater because it looks like it used to be a lake where tiny life forms could have lived. The rover drills, scrapes, and collects rock samples to study with its science tools. It also saves some samples to bring back to Earth in the future for even closer study. Perseverance has found some surprising things on Mars. Scientists studying the data it sent back have discovered that Jezero Crater has changed a lot over time. Long ago, this area had flowing lava, a lake that lasted for thousands of years, rivers that carried mud and sand, and even massive floods that brought in rocks from far away. It means that Jezero's history is more active and unpredictable than scientists expected. This definitely made it harder to find the sedimentary rocks they were looking for. But it has also revealed new places where ancient life might have existed. Another exciting discovery is that every rock Perseverance has studied so far contains carbon-based materials, the same stuff that life on Earth is built from. NASA's Perseverance rover also carries a special tool called MOXIE, which has managed to make oxygen from the carbon dioxide in Mars' atmosphere for the first time. Over 16 test runs, MOXIE produced about 4 ounces of oxygen. That's enough to keep an astronaut breathing for about 4 hours. It worked even better than expected, making up to 0.42 ounces of oxygen per hour. After running successfully for 2 years, MOXIE completed its final test in September 2023. It brings us one step closer to sending humans to Mars in the future. In any case, back to the discovery of ancient shorelines on Mars. This finding might help us see the red planet with new eyes. Water might have been flowing across its surface for tens of millions of years, carving out lakes, rivers, and even a vast ocean. What else have we misunderstood? Did Martian dinos stroll across the vast green valleys of the planet? Or were those bizarre marine creatures the likes of which we can't even imagine? Well, we don't know yet, but one thing is very likely. Mars had an era of warmth, water, and maybe life. So, in the end, will the Sun be to blame for destroying our planet? Or how about a huge meteorite? Or some kind of disease? Probably not. It seems that life will disappear for a very unexpected reason. Humans, animals, insects, fish, and most microbes will be wiped off the face of the Earth because of oxygen, or more precisely, because of its absence. Recent research has shown that the number of freshwater reservoirs with very low or no oxygen levels in coastal areas is increasing worldwide. Over the past 65 years, 4 times more oxygen-deficient waters have appeared in the world's oceans. What does it all mean? It's likely that life on Earth will vanish much sooner than the Sun's energies dries up all the oceans. The end is likely to come in a little more than 1 billion years. But this doesn't mean that the planet will disappear too. The period when Earth is filled with oxygen will make up just about 20 to 30% of the total lifespan of the planet. So we're just temporary guests here. Just think how long that is, 1 billion years. The first Homo sapiens appeared only about 300,000 years ago. That is, the entire history of humanity occupies less than 500,000 years. So relax. 1 billion years won't pass very fast. By that time, humans won't be on Earth anymore. We might master space travel and find a new planet in the vast depths of space. But why can we lose air? As the sun heats up, the planet gets warmer and warmer, and this heat breaks down carbon dioxide, the gas which is necessary for all plants to photosynthesize. Without carbon dioxide, they can't produce oxygen. With a drop in carbon dioxide levels, the methane content will increase, and this gas is quite harmful to us. Now, this all sounds logical, but this is a secondary reason for the lack of oxygen. The real problem is something else entirely. As the sun becomes brighter, it will begin to heat rocks on Earth, such as granite and basalt. These rocks will start to break down faster. When they collapse, they take carbon dioxide from the air, which warms our planet. If there's less carbon dioxide in the air, Earth should become colder. But there's a problem. The sun will shine more, and its heat will outweigh this cooling effect. So even if rocks take away carbon dioxide, the sun will blaze so much that Earth will still become extremely hot. Next, when the sun shines more intensely, it, along with other natural factors, contributes to the breakdown of granite and basalt. These rocks mix with carbon dioxide and water to make carbonates, which go deep into the earth. This takes carbon dioxide out of the air, which means plants can't make as much oxygen because they need carbon dioxide to do that. Besides, volcanoes release gases, which also reduce the amount of oxygen in the air. So the sun, by destroying rocks, affects what happens inside Earth and controls how much oxygen there will be in the air. In about 1 billion years, the sun will become so bright that no rocks will be able to save Earth from its heat, and the escaping gases will halt photosynthesis and oxygen production. And then, our planet will return to the state it was in about 2.4 billion years ago, to the time when the Great Oxidation Event began. And this event was much more important than, say, the first Olympic Games or the appearance of humans on the planet. Billions of years ago, there was almost no oxygen on Earth. Instead, there was a soup of gases, such as nitrogen, ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide, and others. Yes, we have these gases in the atmosphere today, but there used to be a lot more of them in the past. It was difficult for any form of life to originate in such conditions. But after some struggle, it succeeded. At first, Earth was inhabited by the simplest bacteria, including cyanobacteria. They learned how to make oxygen using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. These bacteria worked for millions and billions of years and made so much oxygen that it began to accumulate in the air. This was what we now call the Great Oxidation Event. It was like a great celebration of life, because with oxygen, new living beings could appear. But by the way, cyanobacteria didn't learn photosynthesis because they were like, oh, let's make oxygen, it's so cool. No, oxygen was just a byproduct. Cyanobacteria wanted only one thing, to get as much energy as possible. And for this, they learned photosynthesis. It helped them store energy using sunlight. They used special pigments to absorb light, and the result of this process was the release of oxygen. This had been going on for hundreds of millions of years, and then, at some point, they made too much oxygen. This oxygen started to spoil other gases that had been there before. For example, it ate a lot of methane. Because of this, Earth cooled down a bit, and the Ice Age began. But that's another story. In short, in 1 billion years, we risk going back to that difficult time. But let's hope that we'll manage to move to another planet on our spaceships or come up with some other solution. And what'll happen to our home planet next? Will new life be able to originate there without so much oxygen? Well, it's possible, but it'll be much more difficult. This will require another source of energy besides the sun. It can be, for example, hydrothermal vents. And by the way, there are ecosystems on Earth that use this type of energy. You can find one of them in the Mobile Cave in Romania. Imagine a place where there's little oxygen. It's dark. The sun's rays don't reach there. Over millions of years of evolution, a unique and slightly creepy life has developed in this cave. It was first discovered in 1986, and scientists are still exploring this place. The entrance to the cave is just a small hole in the ground. A narrow tunnel goes deep underground. Inside the cave, the air is filled with hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, and there's half as much oxygen there as on the surface. A human can't stay there without a special mask. But for local forms of life, this is home, and they feel great there. There are several dozen species living in the cave, and many of them aren't found anywhere else on Earth. Here you can see strange little monsters, white snails, white spiders, centipedes with long whiskers, transparent shrimp, and even unknown species of leeches. Since there's no light in the cave, all these creatures don't need eyes. They're blind, but they have long sensitive antennae and paws that allows them to navigate in the space. They also have no colored pigment, so all these bugs and spiders are either white or transparent. But if there's so little oxygen there, and nobody does photosynthesis, then how does all this life survive? It's all thanks to the unique bacteria autotrophs. They absorb carbon dioxide and produce nutrients. These bacteria are food for other organisms, and those, in turn, become food for larger creatures. So a whole food chain has been built in the cave, which provides all the inhabitants with food. Evolution has created a unique ecosystem that exists separately from the rest of the world. It's like a small universe that has developed according to its own rules. However, this universe is not expanding, because all living beings here can't live away from hydrothermal vents and autotrophs. Otherwise, where would they get their energy from? But let's imagine that the sun cools down, almost all the oxygen disappears, and the entire planet gets covered with hydrothermal vents. It's dark, and the air is filled with methane, CO2, and other substances. And somehow, life begins. Even people appear at one point. What would they look like? Pale, thin, and blind creatures with very long arms that help them navigate in space. They have pets, large centipedes or cockroaches that move silently on the ground. People are also quiet because they don't have lungs filled with air to scream. There's silence in the world. People communicate through touch. No one travels. Everyone lives separately next to their hydrothermal source. The whole world has turned into a horror movie in 1 billion years. In 2025, humans will have a unique opportunity: travel to the moon. So far, only 12 people have walked on Earth's natural satellite, but a private company is offering tourists a chance to change that. If you are hog stinky rich, you can pay $750 million to spend several days exploring the moon and watching Earth from a distance. You can even join unique scientific experiments. Now, humans also want to build their forever homes on the moon. In fact, NASA believes that North Americans may have their own share of the moon by 2040. And you don't even need to be an astronaut to buy a plot of land on the moon. Of course, billionaires are already making plans. Their first idea is to exploit natural resources. The moon is packed with stuff that is rare here on Earth, like helium-3 and many rare Earth minerals, or more precisely, rare moon minerals. But I digress. Hey, if you can get your hands on some of it, you may get even richer. First, helium-3. It's great for clean nuclear energy, but it's super rare on Earth because it escapes into space. The moon, though, has tons of it, enough to power Earth for 1,000 years. Rare earth minerals are not actually rare on Earth, but they're hard to mine because they react with oxygen. On the moon, hey, there's no oxygen, so we could easily get loads of these materials to make better tech, like electronics and batteries. Scientists aren't thrilled about this. For the first time, they have a chance to explore 4.5 billion years of space history. Because the moon's soil has stayed the same for billions of years. Studying its rocks could reveal lots of secrets about the universe's origins. But if billionaires mine the moon and destroy these rocks, all that knowledge could be lost forever. Another problem with exploring the moon is the size of it. The moon is big, but the best spots, the ones with water and sunlight, are limited. Most of the lunar surface is dangerous because of earthquakes or moonquakes, radiation, and meteorites. That means tourists, scientists, and mining companies would be elbowing each other in 3 small regions. The first region is called the Peaks of Eternal Light because there's always sunlight over there, making it a great energy source for telescopes or human colonies. The second spot is the far side of the moon. Here, radio signals from Earth are not so strong. It's not just peaceful and quiet there. It's also a great place to set up a telescope and study the universe. The third place is called the Pits of Eternal Darkness. It's where all the trolls on social media go on vacation. Nah, it's really because no sunlight reaches that area. This place is even better for scientists because they can use special astronomy tools to study the most distant parts of the universe. This is also where you can find about 1 billion tons of water. If scientists could visit the moon and study it, they would make amazing discoveries. But today, there are no international laws protecting space. No country can own the moon, but this can't stop a private mining company from calling dibs on a particularly good spot. In the past, a bunch of nations signed the Outer Space Treaty, and they agreed that space exploration was supposed to benefit all humankind. But exploring it is not cheap in the first place. Taking a single gallon of water from the moon to the Earth is extraordinarily expensive, and I bet not everyone can afford that. Human activity on the moon is also extremely dangerous because it might change its atmosphere. Now, to understand it better, let's look at the surface of the moon. This floating rock has many craters that have been forming for billions of years. When a meteorite crashes into the moon, fine dust called regolith, with particles so tiny they can cut like glass, rises into the air. This process once created the atmosphere of the moon, and this atmosphere is quite different from the atmosphere of Earth. A big rocket landing on the moon can launch this fine dust into the lunar sky. And the difference here is that the space objects crashing into the lunar surface are actually gentler. A rocket landing is so intense it can increase the number of atoms in the sky 100,000 times. If the number of atoms in the atmosphere grows, the air turns into a dusty plasma. This means that you'll be breathing in air as toxic as the one that poisoned miners in the olden days. Such an atmosphere could end space tourism too, because it makes electronics malfunction and machinery shut down. Well, truth be told, our own presence on the moon is already dangerous. When scientists discovered water on the surface of the moon, they were super excited to study it. This was their chance to understand where this water came from, and even figure out how water appeared on Earth. But when our spacecraft land on the moon, outgassing occurs. This means that the water on the surface evaporates. This evaporated water can contaminate the water on the moon, ruining all scientific data. Because when astronauts take a sample of the lunar water to study it, they will get the water from Earth they have brought along. Bummer, really. And it's not just the water we contaminate, it's everything. A spaceship can carry any living thing from Earth to the moon. It can also bring extraterrestrial life forms back to Earth. This type of contamination is extremely dangerous because it can put human lives at risk. Something similar happened when Europeans were exploring unfamiliar lands they came upon in the Americas. They accidentally introduced new microbes to the natives they met. And since the immune systems of the native population were not used to those new bacteria and viruses, they got sick and worse. At the same time, Europeans also became ill with diseases their bodies didn't know about yet. And even though moon tourism is not happening yet, humans are already littering the lunar highlands like their own backyard. In 2024, an artist named Jeff Koons sent a sculpture to the moon. The sculpture is a transparent box filled with spheres, and it got to the moon thanks to a ride on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. In each sphere, Koons engraved the name of a human he considered super important to humankind, like Aristotle, David Bowie, and Leonardo da Vinci. Thankfully, you don't have to go all the way to the moon to see this sculpture. You can purchase an NFT of each sphere. Or not. Back in 1971, the crew members of Apollo 15 also left a couple of things on the moon. A figure created by a Belgian artist and a commemorative plaque to honor other astronauts who couldn't be there. And it's not just art that humans dumped on the moon. If you take a walk, you might just stumble upon 413,000 pounds of materials left behind, including a gold olive branch, a falcon feather, a silver astronaut pin, a Bible, some golf balls, a hammer, and even leftover urine collection kits. Most of this stuff was left behind by the astronauts that explored space between the 60s and 70s. So you can find moon rangers, lunar probes, and orbiters that are decades old already. Now, to be fair, bringing back unnecessary equipment costs a ton of money. And back in the 60s, their priority was the safety of the astronauts. The sad truth is that the moon is already turning into an extraterrestrial landfill, and we don't even live there yet. But now we want to settle there, so NASA is trying to get rid of all this trash. The good news? Hey, you can be part of this process. The space agency launched a competition called the Luna Recycle Challenge, and if you want to join it, you must find ways to reduce the amount of litter produced and recycle it into materials that can be used for space exploration. To win, you need to develop a way to completely recycle the trash that is on the surface of the moon. You will help science and win $3 million. And if you get this sum, well, you might finally afford a ticket into space. The red parched earth under your feet is shaking. Large cracks are opening in the ground, threatening to swallow you. But unlike on Earth, these quakes aren't coming from within the planet. A threat coming from space is triggering them. Scientists have made a shocking discovery about Mars quakes. By using AI and NASA's InSight data, they found out that some of those tremors are caused by meteorite impacts. It means that Mars gets hit 2.5 times more often than we thought, and new craters are forming all the time. But the scariest part is that these impacts don't just shake the ground. They send powerful shock waves deep into the planet, revealing a hidden seismic highway and an unstable interior, unlike anything we imagined. This changes everything we thought we knew about Mars. So now, the big question is, what else is lurking beneath the surface? But let's follow scientists' train of thought first. They took Marsquake data from NASA's InSight lander and compared it with fresh impact craters spotted by the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. That's when they discovered that some impacts create a seismic highway through the mantle instead of being absorbed by the crust. Even though NASA shut down InSight in 2022, its data is still precious. The lander, which placed a seismometer on Mars, recorded over 1,300 Marsquakes, some caused by underground rock cracking under heat and pressure, others, apparently, by meteoroids slamming into the surface of the red planet. By studying how seismic waves move through the crust, mantle, and core, scientists keep piecing together Mars's deep structure. In the past, researchers already linked impact craters with seismic data. But these new studies are the first time when a fresh impact has been connected to quakes detected in Cerberus fossae. That's a highly active region 1,000 miles away from InSight. Scientists have discovered this 71-foot-wide crater much farther from NASA's InSight lander than expected, if we consider the strength of the seismic waves it produced. Mars's crust was thought to absorb most of the energy from impacts, which would limit how far seismic waves could travel. But the analysis of this crater revealed that, instead of getting dampened, the waves took a more direct and deeper path through the planet's mantle. This unexpected finding suggests that Mars has a seismic highway, which allows quakes to spread much farther than previously believed. Now, the InSight team will need to reassess their models of Mars' internal composition and structure. And then, we might better understand how impact-generated seismic signals can reach such depths. Manually sorting through the vast amount of data would have taken years. But luckily, these days, there are new tools, and scientists can go from tens of thousands of images to just a few in a matter of days. So, researchers focused on finding craters within approximately 1,800 miles of InSight's location. Their aim was to identify those that formed while the lander's seismometer was active. By comparing before and after images from the context camera over time, they identified 123 fresh craters to cross-reference with InSight's seismic data. Out of those, 49 craters were potential matches for quakes detected by InSight's seismometer. And after conducting some more analysis, the team decided that the 71-foot Cerberus fossae impact crater was the main finding. This discovery is likely to help scientists differentiate between signals from internal quakes and those caused by meteoroid impacts. Initially, they believed that Cerberus fossae produced a lot of high-frequency seismic signals linked to quakes originating inside Mars. But the new data suggests that some of this activity may have been caused by impacts, not internal processes. Another mystery scientists haven't been able to crack for 50 years is why Mars is split into two very different halves. But thanks to recordings of Marsquakes, they may have finally found the answer. Since the 1970s, researchers have known that Mars has two distinct regions. The northern lowlands cover about 2/3 of the planet's northern hemisphere, and the southern highlands make up the rest. The southern highlands sit about 3 miles higher than the northern lowlands, and the crust, the planet's outer layer, like a shell, is thicker in the south. This strange divide is known as the Martian dichotomy. There are two potential explanations for this imbalance. One theory suggests that an unknown internal process within Mars created the difference. The other claims that a massive collision, probably with a moon-sized space rock or several smaller impacts, once reshaped the planet's surface. But Mars' surface is extremely old. That's why pinpointing exactly what happened has been difficult. But now, a new study, published on December 27, 2024, has used Mars quake data from NASA's InSight lander to figure out whether the cause of this difference lies deep inside the planet. InSight was positioned near the boundary between the northern lowlands and southern highlands. Its mission included recording seismic data from Mars quakes, which travel through the planet's mantle, the rock layer beneath the crust. So scientists compared how these waves moved under both lowlands and highlands. They looked for differences in the planet's deep interior. It turns out that the seismic waves lost energy much faster when traveling through the southern highlands. It means that the mantle beneath this region is significantly hotter than in the north. It's compelling evidence that internal planetary forces, rather than an external impact, caused Mars' unusual split. The research team believes that the temperature difference between Mars' two halves can be traced back to ancient tectonic activity. It once shaped the planet, but later stopped. At some point in the past, Mars had moving tectonic plates, like Earth's. As these plates shifted, they, along with the molten rock beneath them, could have created the Martian dichotomy. But eventually, the movement stopped, leaving behind what scientists call a stagnant lid. That's a thick, immobile layer over the planet's molten interior. If this turns out to be true, it might mean that the mantle beneath the southern highlands is still pushing upward, while the mantle under the northern lowlands is sinking deeper toward the planet's core. This ongoing process could explain why Mars' crust is thicker in the south. At the same time, we can't completely rule out the idea that an external impact created the dichotomy. Some recent studies suggest that a giant collision could still be a possible explanation. To solve this mystery for good, scientists will need more Marsquake data and detailed models of how Mars originally formed. By the way, if you ever decide to visit Mars, you might come across the hero of our video today, the InSight lander itself. It was supposed to launch in March 2016, but a problem with one of its instruments caused a delay. It was a vacuum leak in the seismometer. NASA rescheduled the launch for May 2018, and the issue was fixed in the meantime. But this delay increased the total cost from $675 million to $830 million. Still, InSight successfully landed on Mars on November 26, 2018. But over time, dust built up on its solar panels, making it harder to recharge. The InSight lander runs on solar panels and batteries, but it needs occasional wind gusts, called cleaning events, to clear dust from the panels. Unfortunately, the place where InSight landed didn't get enough of these winds to keep the lander fully powered. By February 2021, during the Martian winter, thick dust had covered the panels, and they were only producing 27% of their full capacity. To save power, NASA started putting InSight into hibernation mode, shutting down instruments gradually to keep its electronics warm. They hoped better weather would allow the lander to recharge and wake up by July 2021. In May 2021, the team found a clever way to restore some power by using the lander's arm to move sand onto the panels, helping the wind clean off some of the dust. But eventually, InSight was only generating 1/10 of the power from the sunlight than it did right upon arrival. In July 2022, NASA put it in low power mode to keep detecting Marsquakes. The lander kept operating until December 2022. On December 20th, NASA announced that InSight had lost contact with Earth on December 15th, and the mission officially ended on December 21st, 2022. Now, I don't want to freak you out, but something bizarre has erupted in the depths of space. It was an explosion brighter than billions of suns. But the real mystery is that it doesn't match anything astronomers have ever seen. Usually, cosmic events like this follow familiar patterns, but not this one. It's a cosmic anomaly. This strange cosmic explosion has left astronomers totally baffled. It could be a super rare event where everything lines up just right. Or it could be something completely new, never seen before. This event was first detected by an X-ray space telescope called the Einstein probe on April 8, 2024. It first appeared to be a regular gamma-ray burst. Those typically give off incredibly bright X-rays. But could the answer really be so simple? Something didn't add up. Now, gamma-ray bursts are the most powerful explosions in the universe, and they can happen in unusual ways. Long-duration gamma-ray bursts are caused by the demise of massive stars that spin incredibly quickly. When these stars run out of fuel, their cores collapse under gravity, forming an extremely dense object like a black hole. At the same time, the outer layers of the star are blown away in a massive explosion called a supernova. Gamma-ray bursts are followed by jets. Those are twin beams of material shooting out from opposite sides of the collapsing object. They're super fast, moving at nearly the speed of light. These jets appear brighter if they're pointed directly at us. It's like how a flashlight beam is brightest when it's aimed straight at you rather than at an angle. Now back to our unusual cosmic explosion. Remember me telling you something wasn't adding up? Hey, it was just 45 seconds ago. Well, the problem was that when multiple telescopes observed this event in different wavelengths – ultraviolet, optical, near-infrared, radio, X-rays, gamma rays, you name it – it didn't match any known type of event. The most likely explanation, according to current research, is that this explosion is the result of a white dwarf star being torn apart by a medium-sized black hole. And still, it's not so simple. Now, black holes are areas in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape. That's why they're called black holes. It's believed that stars with at least 3 times the mass of our Sun can collapse under their own gravity once they run out of their stellar fuel. When a star has so much mass packed into such a small space, its gravity becomes so powerful that it forces everything, including atoms, to squish together. This intense density leads to the formation of a black hole. So, when a white dwarf star is torn apart by a medium-sized black hole, it results in a high-speed jet of material that can be aimed directly at Earth. So, could this space disaster be the reason behind our mysterious event? Unfortunately, even though it ticks some boxes for several types of phenomena, including the one involving a white dwarf, it still doesn't fit all the criteria for any of them. The event's short duration and high luminosity are hard to explain using any scenarios we can produce. So, does it mean we have come across something completely new? The universe is full of energetic flashes caused by outbursts from stars and black holes, supernova explosions, stars being eaten by black holes, and other cosmic events. Astronomers usually figure out what these events are by analyzing their duration, frequency, source, and the specific combination of wavelengths they emit. Here, I just have to say a few words about the instrument that discovered the space anomaly. The Einstein probe is an X-ray space telescope project led by the Chinese Academy of Science in collaboration with the European Space Agency and the Max Planck Institute for Extraterrestrial Physics. That's a mouthful. This project is all about studying high-energy space events over time. Its main goal is to find inactive black holes and figure out how matter falls into them by spotting X-ray flares produced by these sudden space events. The Einstein probe also hopes to catch the electromagnetic signals from events that cause gravitational waves, like when neutron stars merge. It also keeps an eye on the whole sky to spot all kinds of space explosions and track already known changing X-ray sources. After the Einstein probe detected that ultra-bright space flash, the event was also observed by a few other ground-based and space telescopes, including the Nuclear Spectroscopic Telescope Array, SWIFT, Gemini, Keck, Dark Energy Camera, Very Large Array, Australia Telescope Compact Array, and Neutron Star Interior Composition Explorer. That's a bigger mouthful. Using all this data, astronomers pieced together the event's characteristics, but it didn't make the case any clearer. Quite the opposite. It just deepened the mystery. This event flared up in soft X-rays for the first 10 seconds, then plateaued at a steady glow for about 4 days before fading quickly within another day. This is much longer than typical gamma ray bursts, which usually last from a few milliseconds to several hours. But it was still not long enough to fit into other known categories. The event's brightness in X-rays was also unusual. It was too bright for some types of phenomenon, but not bright enough for others. The most puzzling part is that the Very Large Array didn't detect any radio emission from the source when it was observed 11 days, 158 days, and 258 days after the initial flare. Now normally, when something this bright in X-rays lasts for this long, it's usually associated with a luminous radio counterpart. But in this case, no radio signals were detected, which is very strange and adds to the mystery. Astronomers didn't give up and considered several other possibilities, like fast blue optical transients. Those are a new class of explosions that release huge amounts of energy and blast matter into space at incredibly high speeds. These bursts are so powerful that one F-bot can be at least 10 times more powerful than a regular supernova. Fast blue optical transients do look like supernova explosions, but they are much faster. They flare up and fade away much more quickly than regular supernova. They're also much hotter, which makes the light seem bluer compared to other supernova. Since these explosions happen so quickly, it's tough to figure out what causes them. In January 2019, astronomers narrowed it down to two causes: a black hole consuming a white dwarf star, or a rare kind of supernova that leads to the formation of a neutron star or a black hole. Now, another explanation for our mysterious space explosion, and astronomers think it's the most likely one, is a tidal disruption event. It happens when a black hole swallows a star, causing a flash of light. When a star gets too close to a supermassive black hole, it doesn't get off easily. No, the black hole's powerful tidal forces tear the star apart, breaking it into pieces and pulling it toward the black hole. Its remains turn into a stream of debris that falls toward the black hole's accretion disk. However, before the debris settles into the disk, it overshoots the black hole in an elliptical path, only to be pulled back in. At one point in this path, the debris collides violently with other parts of the star being pulled in, and that's when we start to see the first bursts of emissions. In some rare cases, tidal disruption events create huge jets of material that shoot out from the black hole's poles. If these jets happen to point directly at Earth, we can see the signature of the event. It often looks like an intermediate mass black hole eating a white dwarf star. However, there should still be some radio emissions coming from the jet of a tidal disruption event. The reason none have been detected yet might be that the event was likely observed too early. Previous studies suggest that it can take hundreds or even thousands of days for the jet material to slow down enough to start sending out radio signals. If future observations pick up radio emissions, it could help solve the mystery. But if there are no signals, it might mean it's a very unusual gamma ray burst or something completely new that we haven't seen before. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.